So, we're back with another one of these. Yeah, I know, the runtime. Don't worry about it. Shh, it's okay. We're here today to talk about one of my most problematic faves, Starship Troopers by Robert A. Heinlein, and a good movie that I kind of hate, Starship Troopers, the movie directed by Paul Verhoeven. And Jack is here, so, you know, we're completely off the rails, all right? Things are just, they're just gonna happen, so strap in. Yeah, cable management is bonkers, especially if you're like this mic stand that I use. I don't particularly like. It's just the best one that I own. But like you can see, I've got like all the cables draped over it because I need to keep them up off the floor. Because the number of times that dogs have like passed underneath and like caught themselves on cables and just dragged everything off my desk all at once, and it's like. And you're like grabbing them like, no, stop. I need you to just like stay very still while I untangle you from everything. And they're like, I don't understand what's going on. I'll just leave. And you're like, no. I'm going to carry my computer away with you.
Fuck. Oh my God.
Okay. So you have both read and watched Starship Troopers. So are we still friends at the end of all of that?
Yes, we're still friends, and also I feel like I've seen your underwear. Like, I know things about you now I didn't know before.
Oh, fuck yeah, that's probably true.
I feel like I've seen your dirty laundry. No, it's fine. I thought... Okay, so let's preface this by saying, hi, everyone. Yeah. I am brand new to Starship Troopers. Yes. I have just recently, for the first time ever, seen the movie in its entirety and listened to the audiobook in its entirety.
Yep.
At regular one-time speed, because I don't have the same ears as Scott, and I can't listen sped up. It drives me nuts.
My wife is even faster than me. She's at like 2 times speed on a lot of stuff. My God. And I'm like, no, powerful. I can't do that. Everybody's got their timelines.
I need it regular human speech speed in my ears, please. So yeah, I know nothing about the writing or production of the movie or the book, and Scott knows all kinds of things, which I'm very excited to learn because I have so many questions.
This is one of those subjects that like I've had opinions about it for a while, but especially over the last like 2 years, I've been like, Paul Verhoeven's movie got a critical reevaluation over the last 20 years, and that has rubbed me the wrong way in some very specific ways. And so this has like been bubbling up in me. So like this is like many things. This is just like therapy that I'm not paying for. I've like roped Jack into doing my own therapy exercises with me.
Well, and it's benefiting me because I have been meaning to both read the book and watch the movie for, I don't know, like a decade, and only now getting around to it because Scott was like, come on my podcast and talk about it. I'm like, oh shit, well, I better.
Hey, you picked it off the list. You could have picked something easy.
Something easy.
No, we have to do maximum effort.
I'm prepared to be here for 3 hours. I hope we're not, because I'll boil alive in this closet. But
we could take a break. Like we could
take an intermission.
Yeah,
I'm sure the audience would appreciate that too. Hey, there's just 15 minutes of dead air in the middle of this podcast. You can go to the bathroom, get a snack, like.
In a previous podcast, I don't know, I haven't edited these yet, so I'm not sure if this gets left in or not, but I did take a break with a previous guest, and I'm pretty sure that like we came back in and I was just going to be like shooting the shit while I ate yogurt or something, and then like I think it was Hera was like just started talking about the thing again, so there's probably like a really awful misophonia like 20 minutes that I won't be able to cut, but I'll be just like
you've got yogurt in your mouth
the whole time. Yeah, just real gross. So it's fine. It's whatever noises. Yeah. Okay, so I've been trying to summarize these a little bit because I am of the opinion that people can listen to criticism, which I can roughly consider all of this, without actually looking at the property. Because sometimes going into something with a point of view from somebody who is familiar with it is useful. So I want to prep people. So Starship Troopers, the book, is one of the most influential sci-fi properties of all time. I think it's fair to say this is a I'm going to get it. It's either 57 or 58 book by Robert Anson Heinlein. It is the progenitor of every big robot idea you've ever seen in sci-fi, basically. Especially like fucking Mobile Suit Gundam and every other mecha anime. That idea starts with this book, basically. I'm gonna pull up a Wikipedia article so I can actually make sure that I got this right.
I think it's 57. I feel like
I think
the
it's
beginning
57,
of the
but
audiobook
you know
said
how
57.
You know how the internet is. Yeah, so it was first in no, 59. I was actually wrong. So that's the book.
Oh.
It came out in a magazine earlier than that, so it was somewhere in there. Anyway, late 50s.
Yeah, and it really feels like it.
Yeah, it's incredibly of its time. But it is a coming of age story as a young, like, fucking Boy Scout of a man, like, who's just the most oblivious, smooth-headed person you've ever met. This is the main character I'm talking about, who is just like does not introspective at all, and just like does things, and he's like, I wonder why I did that, and then he like just like bounces along through life, and he grows into
he only bounces.
Yeah, he only bounces until he grows and joins what is called the Mobile Infantry, which is the super awesome space fighting force of the future in this book. And he goes off to fight the arachnids, the bugs, who are like a colonial alien species that people can't communicate with, but that Earth is at war with. And we mostly like watch him in school, and like first in like boot camp and then in officers candidate school. Like there's actually very little like war in this war book.
Very little war. That's
very
really surprised me. We'll get into
it. And then he grows and becomes like, he goes all the way from, you know, fresh boot to, you know, a freshly branded lieutenant. And then like that's it. That's like the whole thing. It's like it's a coming of age story, and boy grows into a man story. Now, and then we'll talk about Paul Verhoeven briefly. Paul Verhoeven is a Dutch filmmaker who has a very low opinion of Americans, and made his movie. We'll get into I can tell you all about the production of this movie.
I need to know everything.
And he wasn't making a different thing. He was there was a guy shopping around a script. The person that Paul, no. Okay. I can't go into the full thing here. This is the 1997. This is why I was pulling 7. Yeah. 1997 Starship Troopers by Paul Verhoeven is a sci-fi fucking insane, hyper violent, crazy ass satire of fascism. With beautiful production design and excellent special effects, and the worst script I think I've ever. The worst script in a movie I love, I think, is maybe the way I'd put it. It's just an awful, and the acting's fucking bonkers, and it's a hot mess.
Just an insane movie.
It is an insane movie, and it's so weird, and it makes so many bold choices, but also like a bunch of those don't work.
But it's like a cult classic.
Yeah, sort of. It came out. It was lambasted. It got terrible reviews. It did not make its money back in the U.S. It was a huge box office bomb. It eventually made its money back in international markets, and then in the intervening, nearly 30 years, it has gotten critically reevaluated to be like the most important sci-fi movie of all time, basically, in various people that I have heard. And I'm an old head Heinlein fan. My dad handed me one of Heinlein's books when I was like slightly too young. I probably came into that writer a little bit too young. I had read all of his stuff up at that point, and I am conflicted by my love for the movie, because I do actually love the movie, my love for the book, and my wish that these things had nothing to fucking do with each other. Yeah,
because here's the thing. They're two different, like, stories. The theming of them is very different. The entire concept of how war is conducted is different in these two different war stories. They have basically nothing to do with each other. There are some names that are similar, but that's it.
And certain plot points are brought over, and even some because the book has a ton of like philosophical and like political musings in it. It just like it like literally puts you in a classroom at various points and is like, here's some thoughts about morality and how society should maybe work. And they've pulled some of that text into the movie, but like it doesn't actually pertain to the movie in a lot of ways.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes they even like completely undermine, they bring over some of the text or a particular incident and then just completely undercut it and make it as dumb as possible.
Yeah. It's bonkers.
So how do we want to structure all of this?
Because there's a lot.
There's just so much. I think we'll start with the movie because it's more easily digestible.
I also watched the movie before I read the book, so that works for me.
And for the record, I haven't watched that movie. This was one of those movies that I watched like every weekend for like 2 years when I was a young man. Because
I feel like that makes so much sense for like the person that you are. This is not a dig. It's just like an observation. No. Totally. I
don't mind that. I mean, like this whole entire season is about coming to grips with like what can you take away from media that has flaws, and
and like things that were sort of instrumental in like the stuff that you like formed your whole personality around when you were young, and then as an older adult looking back, going, there was some fucked up shit in this piece of media that I put all of my personality and put into all my personality. Figuring
out like how do you deal, like, because there is a real like this is probably the internet's fault, because there's very much a reductivist philosophy within internet spaces that like when a piece of media is dubbed like problematic, right? Like if it says, oh, like that espouses some horrible political belief, or the creator of this thing is awful, that like the correct and moral thing to do is to drop that property and just never engage with it again. And I do not subscribe to that idea, especially you can get into some practical arguments about like when a creator is alive and still receiving benefit from like commercial success. But once the person's dead, which Robert A. Heinlein is, and Paul Verhoeven unfortunately isn't. Sorry, I'm gonna take digs at Paul Verhoeven over the course of this, and I mean these with love, but also
with seething hatred.
I think he deeply disrespects his audience, so that's fine. Anyway, so, but like even when an author or a creator is still alive, like be understanding how you can interact with media that contains shit that either you don't like, or that you find to be a problem, or that like you think sends the wrong message, or even just is ugly. And like engaging with that media is actually not just okay, but super important, because you need to dig into those things. Like saying like, let's use like Harry Potter as the big example, because that's the one that everybody's talking about in the last few years. Look, if you say, okay, well, J.K. Rowling's a transphobe, so I'm just going to abandon all of Harry Potter, that means that you never engage with the like actual bad ideas that are in that property, and you never identify what those things are and why you might relate to them and why they seemed okay at the time, and you never have a chance to grow.
Yeah, so there's interesting thinking to be done within yourself about like what in a property speaks to you. That said, don't give J.K. Rowling your money. She uses it to make sure I personally don't get to have human rights. So like, but
exactly
that's the whole thing is like,
that's what I'm talking about with the practical reasons. But like also like
the practical reasons is she's alive and still doing just horrible stuff for trans folks all the time.
But reading those books and thinking critically about them still is an important part of, because they are hugely influential on like they built the YA space over the next 10 years in a lot of ways, and like we still feel the effect. And like so like it's not just one of those things like we can't just pretend these things don't exist. Like somebody, and maybe this is also one of those things where I'm not saying that everybody should do this with every property. Like it's like any piece of art that you like personally can't handle, like that's or don't want to handle, that's okay. But like there need to be some of us out here who are like the canaries in the coal mine, or like the guy like digging close to the magma who's like can handle it, and so therefore needs to like get in there and like figure out what's wrong.
And like do the actual critical thinking.
So the movie itself is that okay, the fact that I like to tell people about Starship Troopers the movie is that the piece of marketing material that stuck with me from its original release is that they were very proud that they fired more blank ammunition on the set of this movie than any movie up to that point.
Oh my God.
And I think the fact that they were bragging about that says a lot about what this movie is.
Yeah, it really does.
It is in all ways, it is a really dumb action movie, and it is like you are meant to turn your brain off. I think it's from its presentation. You are meant to turn your brain off and watch this movie. It's kind of the only way it's enjoyable. It has since gotten a critical reevaluation as like an incredible satire of fascism. I don't think it really is. I think it's like baby's first satire of fascism. And in fact, because it is it's not doing that job well, that like literally when it came out for the first like 10 years, everybody thought that it was just straight up like propaganda. Like it straight up was just earnestly saying all of the things that it was saying instead of saying them tongue in cheek.
Well, and people were falling for the propaganda as well.
Well, like, but like, if you like, because Paul Verhoeven will say that this movie is about like it's so dumb and like that it's meant to lambast fascism. And for the record, he he grew up under Nazi regime. Like he was a young kid in the Netherlands in 1944 when it was occupied by Germany. Like fucking dude, like has a stake in this game. But he was like, we're gonna make this so stupid and so bonkers, and like we're gonna make everything like very obviously Nazi the whole time through, that people will be able to understand that that's what this is.
Can I just say really fast that when Neil Patrick Harris, baby little infant Neil Patrick Harris, comes out in the full Nazi coat and hat at the end, I was like,
it's so funny.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, not subtle.
Not subtle.
But the problem is that like there's nothing that he doesn't do enough within the film to make it clear that it's satire. It becomes clear, I think, because of its. It only okay.
There's a lot to go into.
There's just a lot to go over. It becomes clearer over time that that's what he's doing, but at the time it was very not clear. And like critics were like, "I don't understand why you make this movie. It's fucking gross." And unfortunately, a lot of the criticism of the movie has colored how people criticize the book as well, I think. And the thing that makes me mad is that the book has stuff that you need to criticize in it, and it's not that stuff.
It's different stuff.
It's literally like, yeah, like I want people to be mad at Starship Troopers the book for the right reasons. If you're going to be mad about it, like you need to understand what's really wrong with it. So broadly speaking, the movie does cover the same sort of beats. We have young Johnny Rico, now from Buenos Aires, in an inexplicable thing. They've set this in Buenos Aires and just had the whitest goddamn cast you've ever seen.
It's incredible. Okay, so I have questions about this. I don't know if you know, in the production, why they cast, I think, all white people to play.
It was on purpose.
It was on purpose? Okay, that's what I was curious about, because it's saying something to be like, oh, here are all these characters who have like Latin American last names and they're all white folks with blue eyes. And I'm like,
yes.
Okay, was this on purpose, or are we just like...
It's a little bit the writer fighting with the director.
Okay.
Not like actually fighting, but like them working to different goals. So it starts off in Buenos Aires in like a high school, where it's the Dawson's Creek casting, where like everybody's 29 and they're playing high schoolers. Yeah. And we have a sort of, it's not even like we've got the three original characters of Carl Jenkins, Johnny Rico, who is our main point of view character, and Carmen Ibanez, who is our girl. And then sort of like latched onto this, who's also a named character, is a character called Dizzy Flores, who, God, we're gonna have to spend like 40 minutes on Dizzy, because like
we have to talk about Dizzy. Oh my God.
Dizzy is the only character in this movie I like, and like genuinely. And she and so there's this thing where like Johnny likes Carmen and Dizzy likes Johnny, and Carl is Doogie Howser. And
Carl is too busy thinking about being a Nazi to like.
And he's psychic for some reason. That's a thing.
Yeah, they introduce psychic powers in this movie, but not really. Like they don't really come up like at all.
Yeah, it's one of those things like, why did you do this if you're not going to do anything with it?
But they did nothing with it. That's so funny.
So, and in the movie, Carmen really, like, it's just so obviously wants to be a pilot. Like, the only thing she ever talks about is being a spaceship pilot, which fucking good for you, girl. But, like, also, it does kind of lambast your character a little bit because she's so flat.
Okay, here's the... We are also going to have to get into the differences in character between the book version of that character and the movie version, because they are two separate people. Yeah. Well, the problem is the movie character is actually a character, at least. In the book, she isn't one.
The problem with all of the characters in the book is that all of them are filtered through Johnny Rico, the least observant man in the universe.
Yeah, that's true. He's just not seeing. He's looking, but he's not seeing.
And possibly I am at the point where, because I read it twice for this. Actually, well, 1.5 times. I fell asleep last night while trying to finish it out. But like, so I've read the book a number of times, and I've gotten to the point where to me, I can't read it fresh anymore. So like understanding that Johnny Rico doesn't like, he's just like, shit's going on in the world and he doesn't pay attention.
He just
and
doesn't
like
notice.
so there's all this stuff going on in the background, which makes me like every interaction that he has with Carmen is like a little puzzle to try to figure out what actually happened in the real world, kind of, because you know that he doesn't understand.
He just has no idea what's going on.
He has no idea. And this is book Johnny we're talking about.
Yeah.
Movie Johnny is a whole different thing.
He's a different guy.
He's a completely different guy. Played by Casper Van Dien, a man who is a certain genre of guy.
A type of guy.
He's a real type of guy. And so he joined in the movie, like Carmen wants to join the military, and so he fucking joins up too. He's like, okay, I want to be with Carmen. I'm gonna try to be a pilot as well, and I'm gonna like fucking follow her around like a puppy. And he flunks out of all of the stuff to be anything other than a mobile infantryman. I don't know if they explicitly say that in the movie or not, but basically, like, they send him off to be a grunt.
I thought he signed up for mobile infantry in the movie. Does he?
No. He hands in the paper to Sergeant Ho and says, like, this is the unit that I've signed, like, I've been placed in. It's a placement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but they don't show all of him like flunking every other possible test.
Yeah, that's a book thing. But he does. So he ends up in the mobile infantry. He goes off to boot camp where he's beaten up by Clancy Brown, the guy who is the voice actor in everything you've ever, like, he's the crab. He's Mr. Krabs in SpongeBob. Like, you've heard this guy's voice. I promise. He's a fantastic 80s and 90s villain actor. He's a really great character actor. He played the main villain in Highlander, the original Highlander. So he's like,
wow.
Yeah. He's this big, tall, like, good looking guy, but also he's like perfect for villains. He's also one of the principal villains in The Shawshank Redemption. Really, actually love Clancy Brown's performance in this. Although
this is the guy who played Zim, right?
That's Zim.
About? Yeah. I have a funny fact about this guy, which is that he looks eerily similar to my grandfather when he was young.
Oh, really?
My grandfather had that same like sort of long face and big jaw, and like, I don't know. Every time I saw that guy, it felt like seeing a photograph of my grandfather from when he was young in the Navy, and it was kind of spooky. I'm like, oh my god, that's my grandpa.
So we under the auspices of Sergeant Zim, he goes through this boot camp, which, as far as I can tell, in the movie, the boot camp is designed to torture and kill as many of the recruits as possible. Like,
it seems that way.
Pretty much what they're going for. And then he graduates. I forgot that they did a flash forward, flash back thing at the beginning of the movie too, where we see the battle, the first battle of Clendathu, where
cold opens on that.
Yeah, cold opens on an in media thing. So we have the first where everything goes to shit, and just like a bunch of people die, and it's all horrific, and like everybody doesn't know what the fuck they're doing, and then weirdly, like, Johnny Rico gets like stabbed in the leg by one of these bugs, and then he's thought of to be dead and killed in action for a minute for like the least amount of time. I don't know what that is about.
Yeah, like 2 days or something.
Yeah, like they like they're just so that we get the shot of like Carmen being like, oh no, he's dead, I guess.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. But like immediately afterwards, it is revealed that he is actually alive. Huh? And then they are dropped into Rico's Roughnecks, a different mobile unit.
It's Ratchet's Roughnecks at that point in time.
Ratchet's Roughnecks. Yeah, sorry. And which is like lieutenant, like commanded by his high school like history and morality teacher in this version of it. They crammed so many characters together. They really
squashed a lot of characters together in the movie.
That character is Ratchet, Jalal, and Dubois, and like they really smashed it all together.
Efficient.
Played by Michael Ironsides, who's another one of those fantastic 80s, 90s character actors who's just like has one of those great voices. His voice is so good.
It's so good.
And the character that he plays is so fucking weird. Like,
because it's 3 characters.
Well, but like, and also together. They've added stuff that isn't in any of those characters. Like his whole
3 plus characters.
Yeah, because they added in this whole thing about like in the mobile infantry, everyone fights, no one quits, which is like literally 180 degrees from what the book is about. Because like literally, you can quit at any fucking point. That's the idea. Is that like they want you to quit. But also like he's like he has a whole big thing about like, you know, rather than letting people get captured, I'm going to shoot them myself, right? And like he demonstrates this, and then you know, sure enough, he's like gets his legs chopped off. A thing that we know in this universe, you can just like they have medical like you're like 5 feet away, and he's like, you know what to do, and Johnny shoots him, and then like it's so weird.
It's so crazy.
This is, although now we're getting to the point where the movie, I think, kicks off, because that first half, everything up to the moment when they join the Roughnecks, that movie is not firing on all cylinders. It is limping along barely to like get you to this point. At this point, it starts firing on all cylinders. We have like a semi-competent force who are still very bad at their jobs. They do not have any kind of like like you were talking about when we talked about Sucker Punch. You mentioned how like everybody had this like tactical feel to their movements.
Yeah,
you could like watch them like move around, and it looked really, really cool. And like that is not how anybody in this fucking movie moves. Like
no, they're just sort of trotting along.
Yeah,
like
they run around. The props for their rifles don't have sights on them. Like that's how bad. Like I love the Marine. We'll talk about production design in a bit, but like they literally do not have sights. So like everybody is just like holding it in the action movie pose, like down at their armpit hip, instead of up where they could see, and just like spray and pray the whole time. Nobody ever fires a single shot in the movie. It's all automatic fire, I think. And then so there's this whole Okay, so now we're into the actual part of the movie. Like we've like all up to the point where like we get to Ratchet's Roughnecks. I don't think this movie has even started. Now we get to the only good part where they have been sent off on a mission. They hear Johnny has this his little hero movement where he jumps on the back of a big tanker bug and blows it up, and he gets promoted for this. And then he and Dizzy finally fuck. Which I feel so bad for Dizzy.
Death flag.
She deserves so much better.
Yeah. Dizzy, girl, you can do better. Yeah. Like, please.
Yes. She deserves a whole better movie.
I want a whole movie about Dizzy that's a different movie than this.
Yes. He and Dizzy finally get together, and then they get a distress call from a whiskey outpost. They go off there, and they find that bugs have overrun this one outpost and sucked the brains out of several people on the facility. And they find this general who's like, game over, man, basically doing the aliens thing. We're all going to die. We got to get out of here. And then they get overrun with bugs, because it turns out this was a trap to try to catch more of the soldiers. And we have the big action, like probably the climax of the movie is the scene where they are just going to get overrun with fucking bugs. And this is when the movie is at its most itself, and it's amazing. Like literally the shot of when like the camera goes up and you see just the field, hundreds of CGI bugs, which in 1997 is like absolutely fantastic. Yeah,
it blew my mind even like a week ago in 2024. I was like, whoa, this is so many like individually moving creatures.
And I can talk about the production from this too, because this is one, like special effects is one of my special interests. So yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. So they managed to get out. In the course of this, both Ratchak and Dizzy die. I don't know why. Like, it doesn't serve any purpose except to knock them out of the plot so that we can bring Carmen back in, and so that Johnny can
so Dizzy also dies in the book, but Dizzy is a different character in the book.
Yeah, it's Dizzy as the movie Dizzy doesn't exist in the book. Dizzy in the book is named, but we don't even meet them. We don't even meet him. He doesn't exist. So they just used a name. So then we have this last part of the movie, which I is kind of like the last big fight of the book, where they're trying to hunt down a brain bug. Is the thing, but it's mostly taken up with a plot where because we've been following Carmen this whole time, and there's this whole thing with like a sort of a romance triangle between Carmen, Rico, and Xander, a guy we made up for the movie, who is his actor's doing a great job of making us fucking hate that guy, because I think we're supposed to hate him. Weirdly enough, I also hate Johnny, but I'm not supposed to hate Johnny.
Totally.
But like, so there's a weird romance thing going on there, which I don't understand. Well, I understand why it's there. It's because the writer was drawing from his own experiences as a high schooler, apparently. But,
oh God, that's exactly what it feels like. Fuck. I'm sad that I know that. Okay, well.
Yeah. So these two, the spaceship that they're on gets hit by a bug artillery, and they jump out, and then they crash land on the same surface of the planet, or the same planet that the MI are on, and we spend the last part of the movie rescuing Carmen, and they meet the brain bug, and we get to see Xander's brains get sucked out in a fantastic scene.
Amazing effects on that as well.
Anytime that like the monster guys get to take over, I'm so much more happy with this movie than when like Paul Verhoeven's in charge. He literally said like, Phil Tippett is like my second unit director on this, basically, like, because he handled all of that. And it's a better movie when Phil Tippett's in charge. And so but yeah, that's the end of it. They rescue Carmen, and
they take the bug back for testing the brain.
Right,
horrible
but like off screen, the bug is captured by Zim, who's had his own better movie off the screen this entire time, apparently, right?
Yeah, which I want to know what was going on with him.
And then like we end on another through all of this, we've been cutting into interstitials of these like propaganda in universe media things of like the FedNet, where it's like talking about basically like feeding propaganda to us, the audience, and in lieu of like an in-universe audience. And then cops, like you can literally see like a mouse cursor moving on screen, clicking on different like subject matter.
It's really
we get
crazy.
These little tidbits and stuff. And then
it's a bunch of like, hey, child soldiers are great. Come join the army.
It's very heavy-handed, and yet still somehow people in the 90s missed it, which I think says a lot. But also anyway, and so it ends on one of those where like we see. I didn't even talk about Carl Jenkins being fucking psychic because he like goes up to talk to the brain bug.
He's also kind of a different character in the movie.
Yeah, not even the same name. They another one where they just like used a different name. So it ends on like we're about to go kill the bugs again, and like we're about to go stomp on them at Clandathu again, and here's our main characters who have managed to survive being like awesome cool guys still at the end of the movie, and then it cuts out, and that's the end of the movie. So
Scott's leaning way back in his chair.
Okay, so I've as I've said, I am bothered by the critical reevaluation of this movie because I don't think it's the masterpiece a lot of people have kind of reevaluated it. I think it is at best baby's first satire of fascism, and I think it's too easy for people to miss the point and think and just kind of buy into what it's actually doing. I know for a fact that I have not seen any of these, but I know for a fact that there are very earnest sequels to this movie where Casper Van Dien and other filmmakers have continued to on in this universe.
Oh my God.
And I don't want to watch those movies because they're not my, I don't want to subject myself to that.
Yeah, you'd have to be. Well, okay. So I want to say something right now before we even get into the book, which is, like, as far as this movie being baby's first satire in a way that it's missable, that it's satire. I definitely like went to high school with the people who would have fallen for this propaganda. And, like the kids whose entire aspiration in life was to join the army the minute they were old enough and get out of small town Kansas and go see the world. And so like, I see where this would get you if that was like the type of person you already were and the circumstances you had grown up in.
Well, and the problem is that if you treat a piece of art basically the thesis of this movie is this entire movie is exactly the kind of propaganda that would be produced by the government in this movie. Like, because it's structured with Johnny Rico is the hero of the story. He gets in, he saves the day, he gets the girl at the end and all of that. I think he gets the girl.
He gets promoted a bunch of times.
Yeah. And he's super handsome and clean cut and all these things. And he's presented super heroically over the course of this movie, which means that it doesn't undercut the message of the propaganda that you present this movie as. Like he wins, like he gets everything that he wants over the course of this film. He gets to fuck both girls as far as I could tell. He kills a bunch of bugs. He gets promoted all the way up to being a lieutenant, a thing that he is apparently very like this version of Johnny Rico is like always bucking for promotion and like really like wants to be of the big guy, the big hero. And he gets that. And like, it is so like, there's no actual undercutting of the message of this being like where does Paul Verhoeven actually do any commentary about fascism is the question. And the answer is only in the FedNet sequences where we start to see what this universe is like. But everything of the actual story itself is presented super straight and does not like unless you think that Paul Verhoeven's decision about how to direct his actors and their terrible performances and the frankly lackluster script is supposed to be a message to the audience about what the quality of the story actually is. But I don't think that's I don't think that's the case because I've seen other Paul Verhoeven movies and that's just kind of how they are.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So like, if this is supposed to be a satire of fascism, then shouldn't we see some takedown of fascism within the actual text of the film? Other than those interstitials?
So here is my argument here.
Yeah.
I feel like you could read it in such a way that's like, oh, because it all goes so well for them, for Johnny at least, by the end, and like you see Carl come out in the Nazi coat and be like, yeah, I got my, like, the position that I wanted as the top fucking Nazi researcher who's gonna like saw this brain bug apart and figure out how it works and blah blah, and like the characters succeeding in the way that they do, like the main characters anyway, and like is the like, hey, this should scare you. Like, watching these people succeed should put a knot in your stomach and be like, hey, we don't want these people to succeed. But I don't know if that's what the intent was or what I got out of it.
So, like, we'll get into I think you're not wrong. You are right in that effect. But the question is, how would if this movie was made in earnest, what would be different about it?
Damn.
Like, if it really was just a Nazi propaganda movie, what would be different? I think that the overall plot works just fine for an actual Nazi propaganda movie.
Yeah.
Like, maybe they'd be more subtle about stuff, but you know what? Like, lately the Nazis have been getting really unsubtle about shit.
Really unsubtle, yeah.
Yeah. And so like the idea that like this is so ridiculous that it has to be a joke falls flatter and flatter over time to me, because like it's not that ridiculous. That's a thing that people like absolutely would just unironically believe and take in. And okay, so you put the stuff in, and you put your main one of your characters in a Nazi, or basically all of them by the end are in variations of some sort of Nazi-ish looking uniform. Okay, but like, you have also told us that all of these people are right and good in the movie. Like, they're our heroes. We're supposed to like them. I don't actually like them anymore.
Right.
But like at the time I did. I thought there was a reasonably fun movie, and I liked and I also had associations with the book, so I was carrying those over.
Right.
But like, I liked it. Denise Richards is really, charismatic, and like Dina Myers, who plays Dizzy, is just like, I liked her performance a lot. I think she's great.
Yeah, she gave a very convincing performance.
Yeah. And so
strikingly so against some of the other performances. And
like what are you telling? Like, okay, so you've like, they haven't actually communicated. This movie doesn't communicate to me that it actually believes the satire. I think it like it hasn't it doesn't undercut it enough. And to that end, because it is not so clear that this all is meant to be a takedown of a particular philosophy, that's why I think people in the 90s missed that this was what it was. So I was thinking about this yesterday, and I came up with a hot ass take, which is the best thing to ever happen to Paul Verhoeven's critical reputation was 9/11, followed closely by RuPaul's Drag Race.
I read that comment out loud to my wife, and she squawked aloud and was like, that's a take.
But I don't think it's wrong. I think it actually is a fucking reasonable way to produce. Because here's the thing. He made Showgirls right before this. So Paul Verhoeven, if you are not familiar with his body of work, he is a Dutch filmmaker who made like these really like very, I don't want to say out there, but very, his reputation for doing like transgressive things has been right there from the beginning. He is the transgressive director, and he made these sort of art house European films when he was back over in Europe. And some of them are really apparently very, very good. I have not seen a lot of them. I have seen his American work, because when he came over to Hollywood, my impression is that he does not have a high opinion of American audiences or the Hollywood machine. And so he made these big, dumb action movies, and very over the top and also very transgressive. So RoboCop, Total Recall, Basic Instinct, which is not an action movie, but is a very kind of that one had got a huge reaction from the audience because of its use of sex. And Starship Troopers and Showgirls, that's kind of like his largest set of American works. Showgirls and Starship Troopers were so badly received and did so badly at the box office that He made one more movie called Hollow Man, which I have not seen. I should probably see it because that one I don't know if it's good or not, actually. But he made one more movie and then was like, fuck it, and went back to Europe and started doing his own shit again and did not come back to America afterwards. He kind of, in a very large way, he kind of left in disgrace. Like, everybody was like, Paul Verhoeven is like this dumb 80s director. He didn't make the transition to the 90s when we take movies somewhat more seriously. And then he buggered off. And then in the intervening time, 9/11 happened, and America did the thing that this movie kind of says that it would do. Like, we became the characterization of ourselves. Like, down to the point where in the movie there's even the destruction of Buenos Aires, which is a pretty, I mean, like, it's not a clear analog for 9/11 because it precedes 9/11 by many years, but like, you can absolutely read that as the same moment of like a sleeping society that has not been thinking of itself as being part of the world stage suddenly gets a major attack, and everybody just goes fucking ape shit with bloodlust, and then we go off to like commit horrors on the other side of the galaxy, and I mean, like, that is a perfectly reasonable read for the exact way that we did things in 2001 and 2002, to the point where we even attacked like an unrelated country just because we're really hopped up on adrenaline.
Well, and it is interesting too, because there was a change made between the book and the movie for that incident, which is that a lot of the main characters weren't even from Buenos Aires in the book. And it so happened that Johnny's mother is there visiting and gets killed. But like, he's not from there. But in the movie, it's like, this is the main characters have this moment where they're now locked in for military service because they're like, that was my home. My family was there. I've lost everything. We're going to go kill all these fucking bugs. And it's like, it's not like that in the book.
Everybody starts yelling, kill them all, kill them all. And like,
kill them all. And it's like, in the book, he's like, I mean, it's a bummer about Buenos Aires, but like, I didn't really know anybody there. And then later he finds out his mother died there.
Yeah. And there's also a much more gradual slide into war. Like, there's a point where it was pointed out that like, even in times of peace, there's been fighting going on. And then like at some point while he's in training, it goes from peace to state of emergency, and then from state of emergency to war. And like, he didn't notice. He's like, it's like, by the time I like popped my head up again, we were at war, and that's just a thing. And like, Buenos Aires happened in the background somewhere, and he didn't, because again, Johnny Rico is also like the world's least observant character of all time.
Yeah, smoothest brained man alive. But like, it's a very sharp pointed plot point in the movie where he's about to quit. He's about to turn in his shit and walk out. And on his way out the door, it's like, oh my God, we're going to war. They hit Buenos Aires. Everyone's dead. And it's like this very flip switch character moment for him.
Yes. And for everybody, like, it's everybody
for
had
all the guys in his like squad.
Previously, everybody had been talking about their own reasons for joining the federal service, and
that scene's amazing.
Oh, we can talk. Okay, let's just talk about it. Okay, so
let's talk about it.
This scene is so
I've actually
fucking bonkers.
seen this scene before I saw the movie because someone
it's the
showed
most
it to
famous
me.
scene. Like, this is Paul Verhoeven being deliberately transgressive. Like, because in the 90s, like, putting a bunch of naked people on screen kind of when you didn't need to, like, that scene could have been at a chow hall, it would have been fine. To put them in this scene and just have everybody's tits on display is a deliberate choice. And okay,
let's set the scene up a little bit.
Okay,
for the listener.
it's they're in basic training. And everybody, I don't know if there's like even really setup to be done. It's just the scene where everybody talks about why they joined the service.
Okay, actually there is, and I'll tell you what it is.
Okay.
In the book, there are no women in the mobile infantry. Yeah. There are none. It's the gay vibes are off the charts because there are no women there. It's crazy. And like,
except for Johnny Rico, the straightest man in the universe.
The straightest man alive. Yeah. But like, even he has got like those types of relationships with the other guys in his squad sometimes that make you go, But like in the movie, they're like, oh yeah, anybody can join up with the mobile infantry because this is how you get citizenship. So like, yes, there are also women, and they all shower together because we're all just, infantrymen together, like whatever, it's no biggie. Like, we got other things to worry about. We're getting stabbed and dismembered by bugs all the time. Like, who cares?
Yeah. So Paul Verhoeven did this on purpose, in part because I think the actual like banal reason is he wanted to put more tits in the movie. He just wanted more tits. He's that kind of director.
More tits in the movie.
I just want naked people on screen. He's also, he's Dutch. He's from the Netherlands. Nudity is not as big a deal over in Europe as it was here. And he's just like, I'm just going to do this. So, however, I'm going to read to you Paul Paul Verhoeven, anytime he makes a statement about any of the works that he's done, take it with a giant ass grain of salt, because I'm pretty sure this dude just says stuff.
Okay.
All right. But here is his stated reason. The idea I wanted to express was that these so-called advanced people are without libido. Here they are talking about war and their careers and not looking at each other at all. It is sublimated because they are fascists.
What?
That is his stated purpose for what that scene is supposed to communicate. I want to state that is in direct opposition to everything else in this movie, which is so goddamn horny every fucking moment of the movie.
Yeah.
Like, they are not, none of these characters are without libido. They happen to all be showering with each other at this time and not like making out in the process of doing it. Sure. But like Johnny Rico spends most of the movie trying to fuck Carmen Ibanez. Like that is his whole thing.
He's trying so hard.
And then like when he, at a certain point, it's like, well, I guess I'll fuck Dizzy instead.
Well, and Dizzy is like trying to jump on that dick the entire time.
She's
like,
trying so hard. And like, there's just, you cannot, like, that statement shows to me that like Paul Verhoeven either does not understand the movie that he made or is the kind of guy who just says shit because
just
like
says things to say them, because like that doesn't follow for what the movie that you made.
Yeah. And if he had just been honest and been like, I wanted more tits in the movie because I thought it would sell tickets, then like fair enough, man. Mm-hmm. Like that's fine. I'll buy it.
Probably would have.
Yeah, dude. I will be pandered to. I will buy those movie tickets.
Try me.
Yeah, it's fine. You don't need to justify it by saying it's all Nazis, but he's like trying to bolster his point that this was a takedown of fascism when I don't
okay, buddy. I think what it actually does is like really sell the like easy camaraderie that springs up between the people who are in this like horrible boot camp together, because like in the book there's a lot more time and space to go into the boot camp like section, that whole experience, and like how difficult it is and how it like builds these really strong bonds because all these people are going through this really hard stuff together. Yeah. And in the movie, they don't have all that time to do all that. So they're like, they're just slapping each other's asses in the shower, like casual.
Also, I think that the boot camp in the movie does a different thing than the boot camp in the book. The boot camp in the book.
Well, okay. Hold on. Yeah. We have to talk about how there are no armor power suits in the movie. The type of combat that we're talking about and dealing with in the book is not present whatsoever in the movie. And I'm bummed about it.
Yeah, no, everybody like, so just I'm going to close out on the shower scene first.
Oh yeah, please.
Because I have the big thing, the big shadow that holds itself over this scene is that there are two competing narratives about its production. Paul Verhoeven and several other people higher up in the staff say basically like we brought these people in, we closed the set off. It was just like the camera guy and Paul Verhoeven and the cast to do this shooting. The cast requested that Paul Verhoeven and the cameraman also be nude for it so that everything's fair.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
That's their narrative. The other narrative is that several of the actors were like, we didn't ask him to fucking do that, and I would prefer if he had not.
Oh my God.
Right? So like
that's crazy.
Right. And I cannot know which one is true. And it's possible also because there are multiple parties involved that some of them would prefer if he had not been naked and some of them were the ones asking for it. So it's like it could be this big messy thing in there. But like
because that's the other thing, this scene has like 30 extras in it.
Yeah. There's a ton of people. And like if you ever hear I want it to be known that there's two narratives here, because if you ever hear the tidbit that like Paul Verhoeven did that specifically to make his actors more comfortable, that he very likely did not do that like successfully. There seems to have been several people on set who were made more uncomfortable, and that it seemed to have been his idea rather than so like there's
interesting.
And that's just scummy enough that it makes me uncomfortable when I watch that scheme, knowing that part of the story. Okay,
totally fair.
So we can talk about the fact that so the power armor thing,
we haven't even gone into the book like basically at all yet.
We haven't. So this is probably the biggest influence that this book has had on sci-fi, because Robert A. Heinlein had a habit of coming up with ideas that then other people either really liked or even just like made it into the real world. Famously, the idea of a waterbed could not be patented because he had described a waterbed several years earlier in one of his books. So when somebody made it and tried to patent it, they're like, no, this guy made it up. Yeah. And so it's prior knowledge. So like, he has a habit of this, and he goes into kind of a lot of detail about how one of these things would work. because the idea is that it works under negative feedback. So if you move your hand, the switches that make you move your hand are then pulled away from your hand by the suit. It's a thing that you just wear instead of piloting it. And that particular idea, in some variation, sometimes with neural interfaces, sometimes with senses, but the idea of a very strong robot suit that you can just wear instead of like having to learn how to, haul levers and pilot it, carries on everywhere. Like that's just like a baked in part of sci-fi here. And he like sat down and figured out how it might work and described it and was the first one to really talk about it. Same also with the idea of drop troopers. Like the characters are called drop troopers or cap troopers. They're called cap troopers in the movie for some reason, despite the fact that that comes from capsule troopers, the ones who are dropped in capsules. And
yeah,
so
and I'm like, wait, that's not even what's going on in this movie.
It's not. It's so that's also a thing. You see that in Halo. You see that in just it's all over the place. And then famously, this whole movie was made much more popular by or the book was made more popular by Helldivers 2, which got real popular recently. So like it's been a resurgence from it. But it's so ingrained that like it's a super big part of sci-fi. And this is the moment where it originates. And honestly, it comes into the world fully formed. Like the idea of like a cybernetic enhancement in a lot of ways. It's a thing that you just wear and it enhances all of your abilities. He talks about a heads-up display. I think before that technology was really weird, where he's talking about using like there's a screen above your head that's projected onto a half mirror that you can see at the top of your field of vision, so that you can have information displayed directly in your field of vision rather than having to like look to a separate display. It's like
way ahead of its time.
Yeah, really. People still, I mean, like we're seeing some amount of exoskeletal robotics used now, but like this is an idea that started in the mid 50s with Robert A. Heinlein sort of thinking about it, and he's the one who popularized it, and that's really cool. And it also, he spent a lot of time thinking about what war with that technology would look like. We only see really in detail one real battle, and that's the very beginning. It's the cold open to the book where they're fighting not the arachnids, a different group, and we see him kind of running through a single mission where they're dropped out. He spends a lot of time talking about how re-entry works in one of these things where like multiple heat shields are burned off and then multiple parachutes.
The capsule comes off in stages and all this shit.
And then like the suit itself has retro rockets so that he can land safely, and then that allows him to sort of bounce around through the world. And at one point decides, I can't I can bounce over buildings, but that's getting a little dangerous because they're predicting it, so I'm gonna go through a couple of buildings instead because I'm a fucking metal gorilla. I could just like bust down a wall if that's fine. They're carrying, this is a very 1950s idea. They're carrying mini nukes that he can like fire off at various things, and they're treated super casually. Like that's not a big deal that we have these like little nuclear weapons.
Okay, so I actually know one thing about the writing of this book. I have no one factoid, which apparently is that Robert Heinlein wrote this story in a couple of weeks when he found out that they were discontinuing nuclear testing.
Yes. It's 100%. One of the, we can get to the philosophy parts later about it, where like he's talking about like how like conflict is a necessary part of the world. Like this is where you can get into real conflict, really real criticism of the real book. But like
he goes off on this whole rant about corporal punishment. I can just imagine him at his little typewriter, bang, 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 like typing away so fast.
He loves corporal punishment. He loves hitting kids.
He loves that shit.
At least within this book, he loves hitting kids. And like these are the things that you should actually be criticizing.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And his whole thing, like Robert A. Heinlein with gender, I've got like a whole.
Oh my god.
Yeah, because he's kind of fucked, and the worst kind of fucked because he thinks he's enlightened.
Yeah.
So all of the type of war within this universe is a very specific like aesthetic and a very specific like setup, which is because one of the main premises of his universe is that this is an all volunteer force that like we try our hardest to kick you out of, because the point of the political system is that like only the people who want it the most and are willing to sacrifice the most are the ones that we can trust with things like voting and being politicians. That's like that's the closest it gets to fascism in my world, is that like it does define an in-group, but it's the people who most want to help the greater good, which is kind of a weird That's not
well, and okay, so but here's the thing, right? The greater good, I'm making quote marks around that in my voice. The greater good for the people of planet Earth, Terra, is like expanding throughout the galaxy and possibly wiping out or beating into submission the other aliens who live out there.
very possibly.
So
but
like that's the.
But like so like, and that's the thing is like one of the okay no okay we'll reattack on politics later because we're so all over the place. So. But anyway, so this is like all of this is about because he is using the MI as a because he's very specifically arguing against conscription, like he talks about how fucking badass the mobile infantry is and how, but very specifically, this is an all volunteer, highly trained, super effective force. That's later, like that's the like thesis behind it. And he's coming off of World War II, which was a mass conscription event, and then also we had conscription during the Korean War, which I think has just ended at this point. And so like he's making a point to be like, hey, that's not the way to fucking run a military. He's saying like he's making actually a very technical point about like the thing, which is very much not what the movie's doing. The movie is talking about like just like we're gonna throw bodies at it. Basically, is like the only thing
first thing that the recruiter says to them at the desk is like, "Oh, great, meat for the grinder," and it's like that's not the sentiment being portrayed in the book even a little bit, because they're like these guys are fucking expensive to train up and kit out because they are in these expensive mobile suits and they have been also trained for months.
You're talking about that. You're talking about a cold open in the cold open of the book. We have it's the first. We find out later that is the very first drop they do after they lose Lieutenant Ratchak. So it's Jalal talking to his men. And he says this whole big thing about like, hey, you guys are very expensive. You cost $500,000 each, blah, 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 bring it back. But like, it is so easy to like look at what's going on there and be like, hey, we just lost Lieutenant. Don't none of you fucking die. I'll be very sad if you guys die because like we can't handle this. I literally can't handle this right now. It is so sweet, actually, in a lot of ways.
When you like know in retrospect what just happened before this scene. Well,
and once you understand the language that the book uses about how men interact with each other, because
it's a whole
rituals
are fucking intricate. Oh my god!
But also like it's very clear. Like Johnny learns over and over and over again that the people who are the hardest on him are the ones who like him the most,
who care about him and want him to survive.
And like he hears little bits and pieces behind the scenes, or they contact him later, and he's like, and so it's very clear what the book thinks about like how men interact with each other is that they cannot say like how close they are and how important they are to each other. You have to be hard on each other so that you can be strong men, and that will get you through things. Like
man, we have to at some point we have to talk about the scene where he gets reunited with his father, because that was not in the movie either, and
it's a whole thing.
Like, wow, okay,
it's maybe the thesis of the book, and they cut, so. Okay, and anyway, so for cost reasons, they couldn't do this in the 90s. Like it would be relatively simple to do it now. Yeah, it would relatively. I mean, like
it would have been like actually $500,000 per suit to like put them on screen.
But like I mean, like The Edge of Tomorrow did this. Like they did.
The Edge of Tomorrow is one of my favorite fucking movies, and I understand now like where it came from, having seen Starship Troopers and read the book. I'm like, oh, they actually did it. They put that shit on the screen, and it ruled. It was so sick, and I knew it would be.
We have a. God, I need to read the light novel that it's based off of, because the light novel is also better than the movie in certain ways.
Damn, and the movie
also has the best name of all time, which is All You Need Is Kill. That is the name of the original property, which is that communicates so much to me what that is about. Whereas The Edge of Tomorrow, I could literally name any sci-fi property The Edge of Tomorrow, and it would be fine. But we can't talk about that. We're barely going to make it through both of these other things right now.
Sometime I want to talk about Edge of Tomorrow, because I want to talk about Emily Blunt's muscled arms when she does that stupid push-up like 80 times. We have to see her do it. Oh my god. Not right now, though. We can't talk about it.
Not right now. Okay, so actually, if we want to talk muscle arms, maybe we should do an entire retrospective of the Terminator franchise.
I need to watch the Terminator movies.
Yeah, but dude, if you right now, I'm offering you, if you want to have a reason to watch all the Terminator movies, and we just want to talk about Terminator movies once a month for the next like seven months, I will fucking do that. There is
Terminator podcast.
Yeah, why not? Anyway, because I am here for that. I've watched the
Okay.
first set of them, and I need to watch the lighter ones that go kind of off the rails.
Okay.
But there are muscly armed women in several of those movies.
Let's
and
fucking go. I love to see it.
okay, so where the fuck was I?
I'm so sorry.
So they couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. They even toyed with the idea of let's like drop the power suit idea, but we're gonna still keep the bounce where like people are like, you know, jumping over.
Maybe they just have jump
highly
jets
mobile and stuff
only.
like that. And again, they're like, this is gonna be too expensive. And it was also, and here's the secret. It was not part of what the script originally was. So the thing that makes this movie make so much more sense is that the guy who wrote RoboCop could not make RoboCop. He made RoboCop and RoboCop 2, and he couldn't make any more RoboCops happen. Nobody was interested in RoboCops. So he started like bouncing around and trying to figure out ideas. And he started writing a script which was called Bug Hunt at Outpost 7. That was the script. And he started shopping it around. And he originally had thought, what if I make Starship Troopers? But he's like, Starship Troopers, that's like the most important sci-fi book of the 20th century, one of them. But so surely the rights for that aren't available. So he wrote a whole different novel. He wrote not novel, but he wrote a whole different script. And he started shopping around. And he couldn't sell it anywhere. And then one of the movie executives he was talking to was like, why don't you just make it Starship Troopers? And he's like, well, can we do that? And he's like, sure, we'll buy it and we'll make Starship Troopers. So they had a script already.
Oh, no.
And then they clamped Starship Troopers on top of it, basically.
That's what it feels like. Oh my God, that's exactly what it feels like.
And this is why, like, the section that is Outpost at the Bug Hunt at Outpost 7, which is the whole section with the distress call going into the big battle with all the bugs, that feels like the best part of the movie to me, because it's the part of the movie that survives from the original idea. It's not, because that's not in the book, basically. That entire sequence is made up for the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, to me, it's obvious that was the part of the script that originally happened. That was like what this movie was. Well, that's what the movie was going to be before we decided to also make it Starship Troopers.
Kind of make it Starship Troopers.
Yeah, but like they didn't make it enough Starship Troopers to please all of the many, many people who read this book.
Right.
All of the sci-fi fans, because every sci-fi fan in the 90s had read Starship Troopers. So like you're just going to piss all of those guys off. And Starship Troopers doesn't have enough cachet with the general public to be a selling point for anybody who hasn't. The people who wouldn't be mad. So it's like, to do this, it was an easy way to sell the movie to studios, but it was the death knell for selling this movie to an audience, because everybody's gonna hate it. Like either they're gonna
no matter who it is, they're gonna hate it.
Yeah, they're like, just it needed to be itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Damn.
Yeah.
What a bummer.
And so the writer he went back and reread the book, and he tried to incorporate as much as possible, and lifting certain sections directly out of it and all this.
Yeah,
stuff.
totally.
But like made just the weirdest changes. Like, for example, I think the Dizzy character like is such a strange addition to this movie, because
wild.
It's only done in service of this love interest thing. Dizzy's a named male character in the book, but like literally dies in the first scene, and then is only referenced as like, oh yeah, that was the drop where Dizzy died.
Oh yeah, that was the battle we lost Dizzy. You don't even ever get to learn anything about him as a guy, like as a person, as a character. And then they were like, oh, wait, here's a name of a guy we didn't know anything about. Let's make it this other whole sort of fully formed human person.
And like the relationship between Carmen and Rico is dramatically different, so that they can shove this love interest, this love story thing into the middle of this movie.
Quadrangle in there.
Yeah. It's this polygon thing that like doesn't work. Like, and like, I just don't care about any of these people. Like, is the thing is that they're not like Casper Van Dien. I don't know if he's a good actor or not, but he's not good in this. He's and part of that is also because every time you do a movie, it's not just the performance that was on the set, but it's also what takes were chosen in editing. So it's entirely possible that like Paul Verhoeven crafted all of these performances in the edit bay. So I won't even like necessarily dig all the actors. They might have had a really good performance in there somewhere, but man, they are not there on the screen. They're and the script's not there. Like, okay, so we know that Carmen really, really wants to be a pilot. She wants to be a pilot more than anything else, but she seems to be very also concerned with like the moment she hears from anybody who like has any connection to being a pilot, she like runs over to the guy. It's always invariably a guy that has some sort of connection to being a pilot, and it just starts fawning on them. Like it gets her
flirting with him.
Yeah.
And like, it's this to me is a little bit like writing female characters in 90s media where they that's just the only way they know how to interact with, or the only way they know how to show a woman interacting with men is to have her flirt with them. And it doesn't do her character a service here because she's supposed to be like laser-mindedly focused on becoming a Starship pilot. And having this like thing where she's on and off with Johnny kind of, but also she'll flirt with any other dude who's like, oh, I'm in pilot school, we're gonna be pilots together, baby. And she's like, that's so fucking sexy of you, let's do it on the console right now. And I'm like, this is not what's happening right now.
And it's because the writer doesn't understand women's internality, I guess. He doesn't think of them as like fully
well,
formed
but
people,
obviously fucking Heinlein didn't either, because the way that he talks about women is also unhinged. And okay, so let me preface this by saying the only other Heinlein that I have read is the Puppet Masters, or whatever it's called, the one with the brain slugs, brainstem slugs, which now that I've read that book, well, I read that book in high school. When I read that book, I was like, I understand what Animorphs is now, you know, like all those ideas that he came up with that people just incorporated into sci-fi.
Yeah. And like, he's one of the principal like pillars of early 20th century science fiction. Like,
totally. But like, so having only read that other piece of his work, I feel like I already have such a complete picture of how he thinks of women, which is just unhinged.
He's like Heinlein and gender. Like I said, I probably have like a 3-hour video essay somewhere in me about this because it's absolutely fascinating. He's a horny ass motherfucker, for one thing. This should be clear that like Heinlein like cannot separate his brain from sex. It's really hard for him. Do it. He just can't. He's so horny. He was also surprisingly a wife guy. I
could see that.
His second wife, Virginia Heinlein, he loved her so much that like whenever a like cool ass lady shows up in any of his books, it's some version of Virginia Heinlein. Because and he's always talking about how everybody loves her and wants to fuck her and is super great, and she's funny and capable and can do anything she wants, because he's like she's great, I love this woman.
So I love my fucking wife. Well, and the way that he all of the like point of view characters in his books, again the ones that I've read, which are not that many, are like women as a concept are like so hot, so cool, so capable. They're like strong and powerful, but also so sexy, and like they don't always turn it on, but when they do turn it on, it's like, oh my god, it's blowing my mind. Like that's just how he talks about them all the time. And like the section of the book of Starship Troopers where Johnny is stationed on a co-ed ship for the first time, so there's none of the shower ass
slapping. Talk about the bulkhead where like it just separates, and it's how much of a pleasure it is to sit at the bulkhead just in case you might hear a woman's voice.
You may hear the dulcet tones of a woman like on the other side of this wall. Everybody's waiting for the opportunity to hear a woman speak, even from a distance, and to know that they're over there. And I'm like, you, what is happening in your head? Women are great, okay, but like, what?
You're not. Here's the like, you've got a pretty good picture of how he thinks about women, because that's
okay.
That's a big
I
deal.
Figured as much.
It's a really big deal, especially in his, because the I don't know where Puppet Masters sits, but for sure, Starship Troopers is the cusp where he stopped writing for a younger audience and started to write for a more adult audience. And
Puppet Masters is not for kids. It's like an adult
but it's literally like the last of the, it's like there's the transition point. And once he started to be able to write for adults, he was just allowed to talk about sex. And so a lot of that language that you hear in there in Starship Troopers, in later books, he just fucking, all the characters fuck all the time. There's just constantly
just
having
all
sex.
The time.
And he's also, the elephant in the room is that he gets weird later on, especially with things like adult incest is a thing that he addresses multiple times, enough that you're like, this wasn't just an idea that you wanted to talk about in one book. You keep bringing this shit up.
Yeah, you had much to say about it.
You're making it weird, dude. But he's an incredibly horny individual. That being said, the one thing you will miss out on in this book that does come up later is that I do think he is capable of writing female characters, but and he thinks of himself as he would not have called himself a feminist, but he would have called himself like enlightened or like an egalitarian or something.
Yeah, sure.
But his opinion, but the way that manifests is that Heinlein thinks that women can be just as capable of men as men, but to do so they must be men, basically. Like they act like men. Like if the way any woman is perfectly capable of doing all of the cool things in the world, but she must do them in the masculine way. And that is when she is at her most powerful. And then also on top of that, she'll be fucking sexy as hell because I love women and I'm going to be,
I love women.
I'm going to have a half chub anytime any of them are around at all. Like I'm just going to
literally any. Well, and like the thing that I remember from the beginning of Starship Troopers, the book, sticking out to me.
Yeah.
When it first became clear that, there just aren't women in the mobile infantry literally at all. Yeah. He goes into this whole thing about like, well, yeah, like most of the pilots are women because they are like uniquely suited to, he's doing some whole bioessentialism about how women are better pilots for XYZ reason.
Yes.
And that's bonkers also. Like,
that's a thing I think aged a little bit more poorly because this was the 1950s and there was and like literally the idea that like women could be really, really good pilots is revolutionary in 1950.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
The fact that they have a place in war at all and that they would not only be good, if not better than men is like kind of revolutionary in 1950.
At anything, right.
And like he's making that argument but like society left him behind, you know? And so, and we'll also talk about him and race later because that's a whole thing. Oh my God. So he like his idea is that like he doesn't look like objectively at the world and see like the value that actually exists in the like great plurality of the world. He just has a very clear idea of what a good person in his mind looks like, which is this super ultra capable, like I don't want to say ubermensch, but like kind of like it's a person who can do anything. He's stated publicly that like, that's his ideal version of a man. And he also thinks that women can do that too. But like his idea of it is so closely tied to being a man that like women it basically comes down to women can be just as good men as men can be is his idea.
Yeah. In the exact same ways.
Yeah. And exactly. And like not that there's any value in femininity other than how fucking sexy they are, but rather that like there's nothing stopping women except for, you know, not a lack of trying or society that keeps them from doing all the cool things men do. But they would be doing them as men would be. It's a different sort of fucked up, but it is a very specific kind of fucked goofy.
Up. And I do think it is a product of its time as well.
Yeah,
like
100%. He changes over time. Again, I won't launch into the 3-hour thing about him and gender and sexuality and all that stuff. So yeah, but like this and Starship Troopers is in much the way that like people think Starship Troopers the movie is about fascism. Starship Troopers, the book, is about masculinity to me. Like it is so much the idea of like, here is how you grow to be a man. Yeah. Like here is here is a template you could follow and a way to move through the world that will lead you to being a successful man. And it is to be like, to do the hard things, to do them on your own as much as possible and not ask for help, to like be violent, but not capricious with violence, like to be capable of violence but not actually be violent necessarily unless it's necessary.
Violence is like a tool of control.
Yes. And that like it is, I mean, not just like in many ways violence is a expression, certain kinds of violence or expressions of love is a thing that is actually
violence as a communicative tool.
Yeah, where like because there's a huge he goes off several things about like how this is where we got to where this movie loves corporal punishment, but he is so bought onto the idea that like you need to actually punish people in order to teach them to be good people because they are little animals by nature. So you have to beat morality into them. And failure to do that is like not just like it's literally like you're failing a child if you don't like beat them enough that they turn into a good person. And like there's a huge rant about it. And it's like
long, it's many pages.
Yeah, and like the plot such as it is grinds to a halt so that we can talk about this multiple times to the point where like
there's a couple points where the plot grinds to a halt so that we can get a little rant that you can picture him at his keyboard bang 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 clacking away like he had so much to say about
he did. And like I know enough about his actual real life politics to know that like what he says in this particular book doesn't 100% match up with like his real life views.
Interesting. Okay.
But like
I was curious about that.
It's not good. It's just different in a bad way or bad way in a different way. He's a very ultra libertarian kind of guy.
Interesting. Okay.
In a way that like a white dude only a white dude in the 50s can be like as libertarian as
right.
And sometimes that went in a good direction. He's actually pretty good on like LGBTQ issues, for example, for somebody from the 50s, and actually really quite good on race in a lot of ways, with some notable exceptions. But like also like, no, everybody should be able to like go off into the woods themselves and make a little farmhouse, and that's like the ultimate freedom, and that's the best way to be a person, kind of thing. It's very, very weird. Anyway, okay, we were talking about what getting back on topic. I don't know if we're
oh my god, you were talking about the mobile suits and how they aren't in the movie.
Yes. And okay, so the movie, like, again, it was because it's something else. This was meant to be a different thing, and they glommed Starship Troopers on top of it. Okay, so that was all the writer that I was talking about, where he like wrote this script and then they put Starship Troopers on top of it. And then when Paul Verhoeven got involved, the writer handed him the book. He read the first 2 chapters and then said, "I don't like this," and threw it away and didn't.
I don't like this.
Yeah, and just completely dismissed it.
Oh my god.
So I'm like, no wonder this movie doesn't have anything to do with Starship Troopers at its heart. Like, the director was actively working against what few like things that we've been trying to be introduced from the writer. Like, he didn't care.
Like, I'm not dealing with all that. We're gonna do something else.
Yeah, and to the point where like he continued rewrites the Paul Verhoeven did. And like to the point where he added a scene where Carmen Ibanez like apparently had sex, and there was a topless scene for her, and Denise Richards just refused to do it because it wasn't in the contract, and she's like, "Fuck this!"
That's so valid of her.
Yeah,
girl, stick up for yourself.
But like that says something about Paul Verhoeven, that he's like, I need more tits in this movie, and he just like
more tits.
Yeah, well, she can't be in the shower scene because she's a pilot. She's not mobile infantry, so let's write a different scene for her. Very very bro energy.
Yeah.
I like this. I still like this movie. We haven't even talked about like special effects and production design yet, because like this is where the movie fucking goes off the rails in a good way to me. Because like it looks, well, again, when we get to the point where the movie starts being itself, the movie looks great. Like the point where like is a thing about the mobile infantry fighting bugs on a big desert planet. Like suddenly this thing, all of this clicks together, and like I love the props. I love the costumes. Famously, by the way, you will notice that the Starship Trooper armor shows up all over the fucking place.
Yeah, I've seen it.
it's in Firefly. I think we even talked about this. But like they made so many of these slush cast armor pieces.
Well, you would have had to, because there were hundreds of
there were so many extras, and then also dead bodies and stuff. So they just needed tons of these things, and they made a ton of them, and they just had them in a warehouse somewhere, and it went to a prop rental store. And so anytime that anybody was needed slightly sci-fi armor for the next 20 years for their like low budget thing, until literally like probably the polyurethane rotted away, they still brought these things out and used them. So they're all over the place. I think they're in Stargate too. Like a bunch of TV shows used them. And like
I feel like Farscape maybe has them, and that's an Australian production. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised, because like again, they just went to a prop house somewhere, so they were cheap. And the thing is, they look great. Like they really work. Like it's sufficiently futuristic but still very very grounded version of like of a body armor.
Yeah, for people who haven't seen these things, you probably would recognize them if you saw them. They're like a segmented carapace looking like armor piece for the chest and back.
They look, they're made out of polyurethane rubber, so they look a little bit like tire texture, and they've got the like kind of tread kind of pattern to them. That's always
when you'll see them finished up different ways in like different pieces of media.
And they have these absolutely massive rifles. These
chonkus,
these huge things, literally. And again, they were pulling from like aliens, so they've got DNA from the pulse rifle, in the sense that they have both a top barrel and an underslung shotgun thing that they can that they do use in the movie. But these things are like, they're like both a bullpup, which is supposed to, the reason why you make bullpups is because they're smaller, so the action's behind the hand. But nonetheless, these things are fucking like 5 feet long. Like they're the huge. Longest rifles in the world.
They're so big, but no sights.
But it makes a really good outline. It's like super menacing and stuff. It looks great. Like they, it's a really iconic look. And then we get to the bugs, their version of the arachnids, which are like I don't know, like kind of a quintessential design in like monster design. Like it's super influential. This very insect like, they're modeled after like rhinoceros beetles and stuff. So I'm going to take it back. We're going to back up for a second. Jurassic Park. All right. It came out 2 years before.
Oh yeah, that does have the vibes.
So when they were doing Jurassic Park, when they were spinning up Jurassic Park's production, they were thinking they were going to use some digital monsters or digital dinosaurs for a few shots, but that most of the stuff was going to be done stop motion. They were going to make stop motion dinosaurs, and they were doing early productions on these things. So they hired Phil Tippett's studio to do the stop motion stuff. because famously he's the guy who did like the like even the chess pieces in Star Wars and stuff, like these old school.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. And they hired this entire studio, and then that really never came together. They were doing an early motion test and stuff, and the stop motion just didn't ever look right. It looked too Jason and the Argonauts. It looked too old and not working right. And so ILM developed like how to do 3D creatures in photorealism for Jurassic Park. But during the course of that, they already had Phil Tippett Studio, and they'd given them a bunch of money, and they had animators who could do stop motion work, but they couldn't use they knew how to animate, but they couldn't use a mouse and keyboard to animate a creature. So they built armatures. They took a stop motion armature and they put little sensors over the top of it, and you could move a physical Tyrannosaurus Rex into various poses, hit a button, and that would get inputted into the computer. The next movie they went to work on was Starship Troopers, and they actually built little armatures to do the exact same thing for a lot of the bugs, which made it faster and easier for them to animate the bugs that you see in this movie.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So about 30% of the animations were done that way. And
wow.
And
it works. It really fucking works.
There are an absolute ton of, and they also worked out, I think this is one of the first things where they decided to do, they didn't like when you see the giant field of bugs, you don't see, those aren't all hand animated. They animate copies of them and then copy paste and then change the parameters and stuff. But they wrote algorithms to do all of that, so they didn't have to do it all by hand, which allowed them to use, instead of spending 100,000 man hours to animate every single one of those things, they could just like plug it into formulas and get these huge amount of insects, which to get these beautiful shots.
Well, yeah, it looks very convincing. Like you don't see them moving in batches or like in sync with each other. They're all just sort of teaming and chittering.
And they're also very, very smartly, all of the bugs are sort of hard edged because they don't have a lot of biological parts to them for the most part. So they're kind of like, it's just when a segment of a segmented arm is moving, you aren't having to like articulate individual like they can move a little bit like robots basically because they're insects, and it plays to that thing. It's also the texture of itself being hard means that you can use that it's easier for rendering and stuff. So like it's really great. Also, it meant that all of the shots with bugs in them are motion controlled, which means that like you have a robot arm controlling the camera so that you know exactly what that movement is, so that you can put it into a computer and do the compositing later, and it looks fucking beautiful. Like
it looks so good.
They do such a good job. They also had a couple of full size, not exactly robotic because they're controlled by rods, but you had a couple of full size warriors that they could use for scenes where those monsters interact with people. They also, I love this, hired a bunch of extras who were missing limbs specifically to do certain stunt works.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
So like there's a scene where one of the named characters who is I think it's the guy. It's the Japanese guy who's supposed to be Japanese but isn't for some reason. Who like gets his leg bitten off and then gets torn apart. And so that actual scene involved the guy with an actual amputee. They had a fake leg that they then ripped off, and then like it's just so you, and the guy who plays Field Sergeant Ho is a really famous character actor who actually has amputation on both legs. And so like when you see him like scoot out from the desk and you see that he ends at a certain point. Yeah, he ends at that point.
Real.
Like, that's the actual actor.
So that's really cool because it is kind of hard to do like missing limbs with the tricks and makeup and stuff when you do need the physicality of the limb not being there. Like I'm thinking specifically of a shot in a Chinese like drama where the character gets their arm whacked off and you can see the outline of the arm pinned against their body under their clothes. It's just like that's the best they could do. Yeah, but like they actually were able to also do it. So think about Michael Ironsides in the classroom where he like has the stump of an arm. Yeah, and he's pointing at people with it. He hits a person with it. That was he like not hit, but like he like taps them like you taps them with it.
Yeah. That was an armature that they created. So Michael Ironside had his arm behind him and was actually the one controlling the puppet. So he's fully able to act with it. He wasn't having to work with a second puppeteer. He could control the rod to control the stump arm. They did a bunch of stuff like that. The scene where the guy, he was like, put your hand up against that wall and then throws a knife into the guy's hand. Same thing. They put the guy's arm behind him and then they had a special, it basically was on a fishing line to like fly into it. So they did a lot of that stuff. And I mean, it's great. Like,
it looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like there's a very, I mean, it's part of Paul Verhoeven's style that I gotta praise him for. If you like it, you will like it. But that sort of like hyper violent, nature of like, we're going to show shit and like blood's going to splatter everywhere. And we're going to like show the top of a guy's head get blown off.
Yeah. Right.
That's like, I don't know if it's in service to a higher message or not, because I'm not sure this movie has a higher message or not, but like they did a fantastic job. Like every time.
Yeah, it's well done.
Yeah. Every time that like we're in the action, I feel pretty good like about the movie. I think its quality really goes up when like we're dealing with monsters and stuff. And like, I don't like all the stuff around it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Paul Verhoeven did not like Starship Troopers, the book. He didn't care about it at all. And he fucking made this movie instead. Yeah. And you can tell. I think that it's so impossible to properly adapt any kind of media if you don't have some love for it. Like, yeah, at that point, just make your own thing. Like, just commit to making a different thing.
Make the thing that's in your heart, not the thing that some executive was like, this will make us so much money, blah blah blah. And also, like, really quick, I just want to say, in the like 90s, when I was a little kid growing up, it was still like sort of uncool to be into sci-fi. Like that was a whole different subculture than the mainstream, whatever sports and whatnot. Like it's not like integrated into society the way that it is now. So that was a whole.
It would be a couple of years. I think we were still a few years off from The Matrix and when did Independence Day come out? Because Independence Day really crossed over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, this is after Independence Day. Okay, so we're in that transitional period then, because that Independence Day, I remember being the first like sci-fi movie that was like that to my young memory was really crossed over, and everybody saw that movie. It was a huge blockbuster. Everybody saw it. Everybody loved it. There was no shame in liking Independence Day in the way that there was kind of like liking Star Wars at the time.
Yeah.
Or Star Trek or anything else. There's like the first big crossover event. So we're still in that transitional period, and Starship Troopers is very much not approachable in the way that Independence Day kind of is, because Independence Day at least takes place in like our world. Starship Troopers is very much not.
I mean, it, even when they're like, this is Buenos Aires, you're like, okay, you're saying that. You're not demonstrating it to me really in any way, but okay.
Paul Verhoeven, why didn't you just change that? Like,
why didn't you just change it?
He very specifically went out for his casting. He's like, I'm going to get blonde hair, blue eyed, American Aryan ideal guys for this movie. And kind of did. I mean, Casper Van Dien does look does fit that mold a bit. Denise Richards, but again, like, there's not that many blonde people actually in the movie now that I think about it. It could have been San Francisco, if you had told me in the movie, if they just never mentioned Buenos Aires, if you just said San Francisco or, upstate New York or Vancouver or something, I would have been like, yeah, of course,
that tracks.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Well, so I was talking about this with my wife because she had read the book before but not seen the movie, and she watched it with me, and she was sitting there going, wow, this is kind of freaking my bean, because they could be saying something in the casting of this film that's like, yeah, we're to the far point of the future where the whole planet is like so what word am I looking for? Homogenized, that everybody looks like this now, but that doesn't even track, because you can see in the crowd scenes some of the extras are people of color. So you're like, okay, they can't all be white. So like, why are all of these white folks with like names like Flores and Ibanez? What's going on in this movie?
And the answer is that the script writer wrote it to be a little bit closer to the book, a little bit, not that much better, because the book but Paul Verhoeven's like, I want to do a Nazi thing, and we're going to do Nazi stuff. And like, so he hires, freaking Doogie Howser and Casper Van Dien and Dina Myers, and like these people who like, just white people, which but didn't bother to change all the names because or its location, because he doesn't care. He just doesn't.
Yeah, no, he just wasn't interested in that.
Wasn't interested. Or he was fighting with the writer, really fighting with them, and maybe that's one where he caved or whatever. But in the sense that like that doesn't serve the narrative anymore. Like if you're trying to make it this thing, I don't know.
Or if it does, then say that, or make it somehow explicit that like, the reason you're seeing all of these blue-eyed folks with these names that don't match the way that they look is because like what are we on now? The 23rd century? is when the story takes place, and it's like
that,
yeah, we're all homogenized. There's like not that many brown people left for some reason, and I'm like, okay, that's still all a whole can of beans.
Yeah.
But like,
and it's weird because this is a very specific thing they're doing, and again, it's a place where you're going to piss off the people who like the book, because the book is actually, like, again, for the 1950s, pretty good on race.
Multicultural.
It's like, it's of its time, but it's also like, so here's the narrative that comes out that I remember hearing from tons and tons of people is so many people were so caught up in their own heads that didn't realize Johnny Rico wasn't a white guy until the last page of the book.
That's so bonkers.
Right? But like, that's a thing that Heinlein did on purpose. This character's name is Juan Rico.
It's Juan. They don't ever call him that in the movie, by the way.
But yeah. But his parents call him Juanito all the time. Yeah. And then in the last page of the book, he's revealed to be Filipino, and that like at home they all spoke Tagalog.
Yeah.
And this is a very particular thing that Heinlein was doing. He was like, you, the reader, I know you because I've been writing this shit for, 15 years at this point. I know exactly what's going to happen when I put this character on the page. You're going to imagine him to be a little white dude, and you're going to, like, despite the fact that I'm going to tell you he's not, very clearly at various points in the book, and then I'm going to make it very, very clear at the last minute, and then that will cause you to reevaluate. That is a deliberate thing he was doing on purpose, and it worked. And then, like, Paul Verhoeven just threw it away. And also, mind you, that particular reveal would not work in a
because you're looking at him.
Yeah, you're looking at him the whole time. But like, that's a specific thing. It's probably even if you can't do that particular idea, but like, at least put a Filipino in the role. Like, it's like one of the main points of the book. Like, it's not, I will not say that it is, again, when looking at it from 2024, like, no, like, it's pretty reductive. Of course, the one Japanese dude is a little karate master.
Yeah.
But interestingly, is treated super, like, respectfully by the narrative. And is like, he shows up and the sergeant is like, oh, hey, I recognize your dad. He trained me. And like, they like they fight for a minute, and then like, okay, great. And they bow at the end of it. And then like, that guy is shown to be an instructor.
I'm trying to remember what the term is for like the trope of the, like, Asian person with superpowers, basically. I'm like, that's a trope as well, but it's a very Orientalist thing. But like, if you're imagining the 1950s where we're just at war with the Japanese, like, that's, I mean, treating them with, quite kindly by the narrative. Almost nobody's race is mentioned. I don't think it's ever mentioned specifically. You can kind of surmise some stuff about some characters based off of like hints and things. Like, there's a couple of German characters. There's a couple of, I think that Zim is mentioned to be like from the steppes. I think he's mentioned to be like Asian, but like specifically mentioning these things and then treating everybody very much the same and not making it a big deal in the 1950s is a very particular, like, that's a whole another thing. It's kind of a radical stance in the 1950s. Well, and it is interesting in the audiobook because the person narrating the book does voices for does accents for some of the characters.
For a couple of them, yeah.
So you're getting a little more information from the audio version, but it's still like,
but like,
totally clear.
It's very much, and again, this is a very particular kind of person trying not to be racist, who maybe still has a bunch of biases built into his brain, but is like trying to write the like colorblind version of a story, which, but nonetheless still acknowledge that, I don't know. It's a thing that like it's making a point in 1950, 57, 59 that like kind of doesn't work anymore because it doesn't surprise anybody because we've moved on so far, but like, it actually is making a very particular point in a way that like Star Trek would go on to make in a few years about like how international and like humans are humans. It does run into problems with things like it uses the term skinnies for for one of the alien races, which is, I don't have my timeline. I know for a fact that was a very common usage in the Vietnam War, but that would have been after this. So I don't know if I will surmise that we were probably using a term very similar to that in World War II for the Japanese and Koreans and Korean War. So I will not like say that this was pre that. I'm just saying like, he's definitely a white guy living in the 50s when he wrote that.
Yeah, it's of the time.
Yeah, sure. And didn't reevaluate
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like, again, it's like, this is, you can't like, but Paul Verhoeven's racist in a completely fucking different way.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like he approaches it in such another, in a, like, again, just like, you have to weigh these things on their own. And I really wish they weren't associated with each other, because then I could get actual criticism of the real one. Do you have any other questions about production? Because I do have a bunch of information about the production of Starship Troopers, the movie.
I have. Basically, what I want to do is set you, like, open the fucking starting gate here and just let you loose and tell me everything that you know about the production, because I have questions about all of it. And I don't think I could even like single out specific things that I have questions about. I just have a lot of questions. So
we covered casting a bit. The fact that Jake fucking Busey's in this movie, just like, he's such a weird looking dude. I'm sorry. He looks like Gary Busey so much. He looks so much like his dad.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's just a thing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, like, you know, there's various things about like the production of various props and things and stuff like that. You talked
about the armor.
Yeah, the armor. It was used all over the place. A bunch of the sets were reused from other movies as well too. So there's like corridors that that were themselves reused or that got reused. So there's stuff in this movie that shows up in like Alien 3, and then like Alien Resurrection uses some of the ship models from this one as well, because like these are all these like rather relatively low budget movies that they're like, they can't even pay to have their own ship models built.
We talked about the like bugs and the design. Yeah. Oh, really quick, I want to say it was kind of wild. In the book, it seems like the bugs, by and large, are kind of knee height or maybe waist height in general, but then there are like larger ones occasionally.
Yes.
In the movie, they're huge. They're like 8 feet tall, like the standard.
Well, and also in the book, we mention at most 4 types, but one of them is a conjecture. So there's like the workers, the warriors, the brains, and then they think there might be queens.
Yeah, but they've never seen them.
But they have never seen a queen. And then the movie, actually, I think this is a smart move. They went like Pokemon version, or like full on, like there are a bunch of different subtypes. So there's like these like little sand beetle things that carry the brains. There are the warriors, which are the ones that we see most of, which have these big like rhinoceros beetle grabby things. Very cool looking. There's flyers, which are like warriors, but they have razor sharp wings. They can cut people's heads off, which are fucking rad. There are tankers, which are these big beetle guys.
Those are crazy.
Yeah, which like they shoot like flamethrower stuff out of their mouth, which is awesome. That like melts, and like the shots.
It's like acid. It's like hot acid.
The shots of like various people getting, like, there's one where a woman gets her arm burned off, another one where like 2 guys get completely flamethrower. Like,
it gets, the arm just melts. Like, in front of your face.
Yeah, the amount of care that went into making that look fucking rad as hell is so like it's very much like Splatterhouse. Like, it's such a good job. Then there's also the like anti-aircraft bugs, which are these giant like bombardier beetle things which shoot plasma out their buttholes.
Yeah, it's like boom, and like a giant ball of plasma goes up into the sky.
And then and then we have the brain bug, which, man, that fucking brain bug looks like so disgusting and good.
It looks so gross.
It looks so gross. He's got all the eyes and he's all slimy and stuff. And that's
so
both
slimy.
They got like both a digital model and a version where they that was actually on set that people could interact with for doing things like the brain sucking.
Brain sucking.
And then so like they have like fully they cast I do not remember the actor's name, the guy who plays Xander. They fully cast his head so that they could have guts, they could have brains coming up out of the top of it into the tube, and you get to watch them go down the semi-translucent tube.
Can I say the scene where they get into that ambush and there's the guy who was in the closet or whatever, and he comes stumbling out like, oh my god, we're all gonna die. I was so confident that the hole in the top of that corpse's head was an exit wound and not an entry wound, and that there was something in that dude's head. Like the way that he was acting and his crazy eyes, I was like, there's a bug in there. I was so convinced.
That's and like they even talk about how like they make you do things. They made so and so call for the. And
I thought they were flagging like,
and that's just never addressed ever again.
No, it doesn't come up. Well, because a bug never jumps out of his skull. Yeah. He never like flies off the handle.
He just gets squished.
He just gets squished. But like they were flagging so hard that it was going to be like a chest burster situation, but through the top of his skull. And then I was really surprised when there was nothing in his head and he was just traumatized.
Yeah. Yeah, again, maybe another relic from a different part of the script, because like having that in there would have been really, like, that could have been a fun element. I would have loved to have seen a version of the bugs where like they could bring some alien in. It's fine, we can just do it.
You know, just as a treat.
Yeah, just as an
little
excuse.
Snack.
Yeah, so like they had a real version of that brain bug, but they also had a digital version.
The proboscis thing on the brain bug, like the way that it doesn't come straight out of the orifice, but it unfolds like an elbow. Oh my god, it's so horrid, like and it's so sticky and gooey.
Yeah, so good. And then I love the scene where they're dissecting the beetles. These giant, so they have these big cast versions of the little beetle creatures, and like they cut them down in the middle, and like with their bare hands, not gloves, by the way, just bare hands.
No PPE whatsoever.
Casper Van Dien's just like piling guts into Denise Richards' hands, covered in what I am almost certain is birthing lubricant used for cows.
Oh yeah, I could see that.
It's to the point where she then,
when you have to help a cow give birth and you have to reach your whole arm in up to the shoulder, and
you can get it in 50-gallon drums.
Oh my god. Why do you know that?
I think I got
Scott,
that one.
Why do you know that?
I think I got that one from Mythbusters, but
good.
It's also just a fun thing to know. And then we have Denise Richards do the least convincing throw up I've ever seen on screen. Where she is so obviously holding one mouthful of vomit, of like chunky vomit in her mouth, and she's and just like spits it out.
See, we skipped that scene because I'm emetophobic, so I didn't even have to see it.
Yeah. It's so bad. It's like, for as good as everything else in this movie, like she's doing a fine job, but they did not spend any money on that.
They just didn't make it convincing.
Yeah. And again, I know that the writer brought in the whole romance subplot because of his own experiences with high school, I guess. And because I guess you have to have a romance in a 90s movie. It doesn't work.
Or a quadrangle, no less.
Yeah, quadrangle, no less. And like, we talked a bit about like how Johnny Rico is like the horniest dude in the world, but also just like the least observant. And like, he's so weird. I don't know. Again, this is the cusp between Heinlein's juvenile stuff and his later stuff where we just talk about sex. But like, so like he's super fucking horny, but like it doesn't ever seem to actually have sex or talk about actual sex itself. He just like loves women sort of in an ethereal way.
Yeah, just sort of abstractly, ambiently loves women.
Yeah. And his relationship with Carmen is so different in the book, where it's like she was never his girl. Like she was never anybody's girl. She had her own thing going on. And like,
and her own thing was, I want to be a pilot.
Yeah. And I personally think that you're talking about how she's like kind of not a character in the book, which I agree with. But I do think that it is done on purpose to a certain extent, because you can tell that Johnny doesn't think of her as a serious person all that much. There's even a line where he's like, she's so small and ornamental that you don't ever think about her being useful. But like, that's like one of the very few self-aware moments where it's like, yeah, dude, think about that some more, and maybe you can understand her a little bit.
Think about
more.
that with your brain.
But like, apparently she just like dates every dude in high school and like never dates any two of them in a row, but is also very sweet and nice, and is just like a cool person who has her own life going on. And like,
she's just hanging, she's chilling.
She's just off in a different book, basically. Like, mad respect to Carmen Ibanez of the book.
Yeah, she's getting it. Like, good for her.
I do like the fact that she shows up at his OCS and is like, I need to take him on a date real quick because I just can, and like manages to do it. Like, she's
like, oh, this is the one I missed in high school, so let me take him out real fast.
I want to get a fun date. And like, whether or not like they're gone for 3 hours, so who knows if they actually, but she could just be like, I'm horny, where's Johnny? Oh, hey, cool, he's nearby.
Oh, he's here, convenient.
Yeah. Come on. And then just like does not mention, like, I guess good on Johnny for not kissing and telling, but also like, again, I don't know, like, again, like, I think it's deliberate, like, that he just is super unobservant and doesn't understand these things.
His brain is smooth. He's not thinking.
Okay, let's talk about Dizzy.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say we have to talk about Dizzy now, because we've brought up this like horrible quadrangle high school romance a couple of times.
So I'm low-key obsessed with Dizzy from the movie because I like Dina Myers. She's also in Johnny Mnemonic as she's a little bit like a sci-fi and like scream queen kind of person. She's been in a bunch of the Jigsaw movies, the Saw movies.
Wow.
That's like her thing now. so at the beginning, the things that we learn about Dizzy is that she's like fucking head over heels for some goddamn reason with Johnny Rico. Inexplicably. But like she's the like she's like the quarterback of the football team.
Yeah, which
she's the one who calls all the shots.
Sexy of her, first of all.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're also, their version of football is so, this is the 90s and we need the future version of football, like where they're wearing these really weird costumes and like it's kind of rugby kind of football thing going on. It's played indoors. Very strange.
It's crazy. They were like future space football.
Space football with a silver ball.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's the future.
That's how you know it's the future.
And so she's the okay, so Johnny Rico claims that he was the captain of the team. But like Dizzy is very clearly calling the shots, like literally calling the play, and like he's like not paying attention because he's in a dick measuring contest with Xander, who's also on the other team for some reason, because this universe is 4 people wide. And
this universe 4 people wide, and it's all high schoolers who are 29 years old.
Yes, and she like smacks him on the head and is like, "Come on, fucking pay attention. We're gonna win the game." They win the game based off of her call, but Johnny is like the person who does the thing, so he gets all the credit, and then she manages to get half of a dance with him at the dance because she wants to jump on that D. And
she wants to jump on it so bad.
So fucking bad.
So bad.
He's like, and it's very clear that she's going to go off and like have a career as a professional football player. Like she's being scouted by colleges and she's like, yeah, I'll take whichever one lets me start. Like she's like got a story that she wants to do on her own. Then Johnny joins the mobile infantry. And I guess she does too later because she's not there when they join up. She joins
up because of him, doesn't she?
Pretty much.
She shows up like, I followed you here to
and
get
like
the
specifically
D.
Not just there, but like follows him specifically to Camp Curry.
Yeah, to his specific boot camp.
She says to Zim because I heard it's the best. But like the only narrative we see so far is that she wants Johnny so bad that she must be following Johnny, I guess.
Well, it has to be that too, because that's exactly what he did with Carmen, except then they ended up in different companies because she's going to go be a pilot and he's going to be a jarhead. Yeah. So like,
but then when she shows up, we learn that she's like actually a really super competent fighter. Like she's a hand-to-hand combat person who like, okay, as an aside, the Zim of the movie universe is like so sadistic in a way that is not present in the book. Like,
yeah, he's a whole different guy.
Like, so like in the book, there's a guy named Breckenridge who goes off to fight. Like at the very beginning, Zim's like, who wants to fight me? Anybody who thinks they can fight me, you can fight me. And this guy named Breckenridge comes in and he ends up with his arm broken. And Zim apologizes like, I'm sorry, son, you rushed me. And that's why I accidentally broke your arm.
Yeah, this was an accident.
It was an accident. And in the movie, he very clearly knocks the guy on the ground, has him pinned, grabs his arm, and breaks it. Like, specifically breaks his arm.
On purpose.
On purpose. And it's like, why? Like, why is this guy meant to be in one, he's like trying to forge these people, but not like, but like with it's as hard as possible, but like only because they need to make sure that these people are actually capable versus like, I'm just going to break people's arms and stab them in the hands with knives. Like, for the hell of it.
Okay. So, you said like near the beginning of this podcast that the boot camp in the movie is like a torture camp that's meant to disable or kill as many of the recruits as possible. And it starts at the very first second when Zim is like, I'm just going to break this guy's arm and then yell for the medic and they'll put him in the tank and he'll be fine in like 2 days.
I don't get that. It doesn't, it only is sensationalist to me. It doesn't even seem to fall into the themes of the way they've elsewise changed the book to make the movie. It's just a thing they did because I guess that allowed them to show a guy's head get blown off later and show
they really wanted to. Yeah. Okay, so the way that they changed all of the stuff that happens at boot camp and the stuff they invented for the movie, because the drills are totally different. They can't be doing the same types of combat drills because they're not in the power suits. And so they have this whole setup where it's like, oh yeah, we're like doing this training exercise, but with like live ammunition. And if you fuck up, you could get actually genuinely killed. And then this guy fucks up and gets killed. And Johnny takes the heat for it because he was in charge.
He took the helmet off.
And that's not in the book because they're in power suits the entire time.
That being said, I think the way that Johnny fucks up in the movie is one of the few ways I think the movie reads better because I understand clearly what Johnny did in the movie. He took the guy's helmet off in a live fire exercise and he got shot in the head. That being said, that live fire exercise is totally fucking weirdly designed where like really all have live ammunition. They're shooting real targets. But like they can be disabled, and when they fall, apparently when they get hit with the lasers from the targets, they can fall down and just like spray their bullets however they want. Like there are other people on this camp, like on the sides that are like just standing around.
Yeah, like just around.
This is so dangerous.
Yeah, well, and that's what she's saying. Like there's no effort or care being put into preserving the lives of anyone on this base in the way that it's designed in the movie, which is just kind of bonkers. And it's like, I guess the point that they're trying to make, leading from the recruiter being like, yay, more meat for the grinders. Like they just don't give a fuck about any of these people's lives.
Apparently not. Yeah.
And on the one hand, that's a point that you could be making with this movie. It's a totally different point that's being made in the book.
Yes.
It's as if they're trying to say, we're deterring people from achieving citizenship by doing this. Like the more, young people go to the military and just get stupidly killed in a drill or killed in combat, are less people that are going to have the opportunity to vote and make policy later. And that's good.
Yeah.
Like that's by design.
Yeah. Whereas in the book, it's more of, we want to make sure, especially for the mobile infantry, that like we have only the most competent people here doing this. Yeah,
and the most like devoted, committed.
Yes, exactly. You have to want it super bad, and you have to be super competent. And then, but it's also made very clear that if you flunk out of the mobile infantry, you can refuse to be kicked out of the military, and they'll just put you. They have to find some place to put you.
They'll find a fake job for you to do.
Yeah, but like they make one guy cook. They say that like you can't, like if you want it, we'll figure out something to do because it's your right to try to get citizenship. And we're not going to like, unless you like break one of the rules and get flogged.
Yeah, there's the 31 rules that you can't break or whatever.
But even then, they're not trying that hard. Like they try really hard to ignore the guy who hits them.
He gave him so many outs.
And the guy kept saying, like just stupidly said twice, like, no, I hit him. And they're like, you know that's against the law.
You shut your fucking mouth. I'm trying to give you the out here and he won't take it.
Yeah. And then they flog him and drum him out. But yeah. Okay, so we were talking about we got off again because we were talking about fucking Dizzy Flores.
Dizzy, oh god, there's just a lot.
There's just a lot. Okay, so now even in boot camp, she still calls the shots, right? Like she's the one who tells Johnny what to do so they can win that little simulation with the laser guns, and he gets all the credit again, which is like they did this twice in the space of like it's not that far off from when it happens in the football match to when it happens again in boot camp. And it's like, oh my God, like you could be saying a thing here about how, like there is a point of view that could come out of this particular idea, which is that like Dizzy, the woman, keeps feeding like proper, like good advice and stuff to Johnny, who then gets all the credit for it and like never throws it back to her, even to the point where later on, I don't remember I don't know if she feeds him the advice again or not, but he like gets promoted to corporal after he kills one of the big bugs, and he offers the job to Ace, who's a fucking dipshit. Who's like canonically dumber than everybody else in the movie,
possibly more smooth brained than Johnny himself.
And that guy is smart enough at least to refuse it and be like, nah, man, I already had my chance. I fucked that up.
Well, yeah, that character is also different, right, in the book, because in the movie he's introduced very early as just like the asshole in the chow line who's trying to jump the line and get ahead of everybody, and he's like aggro
basically not
for
the same
no
character
reason.
even at all. Yeah, at this point. Whereas Ace in the book is an older career sergeant or corporal who like basically convinces Johnny, hey, you need to just go career on this. Like this is where you
it says a whole different character.
Yeah, it's just that character does not. They has a share a name, but in every other way do not matter at all.
Yeah, no, they just needed some other guy to like cause problems at the outset for Johnny and then have him be his homie later, so that when he gets killed, we're all really upset.
Yeah, and so then we have who? Ace doesn't die.
Does he not?
No, he's in the last. He's in the very last scene of the movie. Yeah, not that he matters, but like because none of the characters really matter. So Dizzy then gets made corporal after Johnny gets made, section leader or something. I don't know. They all move up a rank or whatever. And then they have we got to talk about the recreational scene between the two, the first bug hunt and the second and the outpost scene where Ratchet comes in and he's like, I expect the best, so I give the best. And he shows up with, I guess, a party and several boxes, which is kegs of beer, a violin, and footballs.
A fucking sick electric violin. I love it.
Which then Ace proceeds to play fucking Dixie.
Yeah.
I wish I was in Dixie. Like, the most racist song in the world. Which, like, okay, I guess that you're trying to call back to the ancient, in this point, like the not so ancient past for us about like what Dixie means, but it like doesn't. I don't know. Something about that. I'm like, you're not. If you're gonna use Dixie, you got to start talking about race, man. Like, and you just didn't.
Have to.
You just didn't. Okay.
Oh my god.
So Dizzy is still obviously fucking head over heels for Johnny, and
she's been waiting in the wings. She's like, everybody's watching him break up over the phone with Carmen, and she's like lurking there, like, I'm gonna jump on that fucking dick.
And claiming that she's not doing it, but very obviously is. There's even the scene where in the shower scene she comes in, and she tells everybody that Johnny joined for a girl, and then somebody asks, was it you? And she just like does this little like shrug of like
tosses her hair. She's like,
but it's like super very obviously not you, because he like is trying to tell you off every fucking minute of the day.
And they've all seen him like getting the phone, like the video messages from Carmen. Everybody's watching over his shoulder every time he opens one, so they know it's not her.
I will say, like, the way that on the video, like, they're not video calls because they're just like video messages.
It's messages.
Yeah, they're mails. They're like voice memos, but with video. It's like sending a YouTube video to people. But like, the way that like the moment that he turns on the camera, every person in the entire camp tries to fuck with him and like starts mooning the camera and like singing and stuff.
So funny.
That is 100% exactly what boot camp people are like. I am sure.
Oh
like,
my god,
I've known those fuckers.
Right.
Even in college, and like that's such a dumbass energy that actually they nailed that one.
They actually killed it. Yeah, like those scenes where they're just fucking around at boot camp are like very realistic in that way, or everybody's just trying to cause problems. Mooning the camera. But I have to say, I love when she breaks up with him on the call, or like on the video memo. Yeah. And everybody who was like crowded around watching just sort of like drifts away slowly, like, okay, we're gonna give homeboy some space. Awkward. Like, this just got serious all of a sudden. Yeah. Awkward.
And so yeah, but like, just Dizzy is there, like in the shadows, like ready to pounce on him.
She's waiting to
the
pounce.
Moment she gets a chance. And eventually, like, Johnny keeps like rejecting her because he doesn't like her, I guess, for real. And then like fucking Lieutenant Ratchak is like, dude, like, don't fucking pass up. Good, like, you are not good enough. Like, you should be saying like, stay away from her. You're not good enough for her. But like, realistically, he's like, do you not understand what you're passing up here? And he's like, okay. And he goes and sleeps with Dizzy. And then they're like, it's one of the better parts in that movie with the little, like, he pulls the t-shirt up over her head. It's like the one time they're like being like actively horny, and it's like it properly works. And then Ratchak shoves his head in the tent and is like, we got to discuss Skull, be on the bounce in 10 minutes. And he's like, oh wait, you're about to have sex. Make it 20 minutes.
It's so funny. He's like, who's that with you? And she pokes her head out from under the blanket and is like, it's Flores, sir. And he's like, okay, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And then like Rico's like, she's like laughing. Oh, okay, I guess we're not having sex. And Rico's like, we can do it. And then we
can do it. 20 minutes? I ain't gonna last 20 minutes. What are you talking about?
This bugs me. Ratchak leaves the fucking tent flap open.
Yeah, he was like, everybody's gonna know.
He's just like, I guess they might as well all watch.
Might as well. They were all gonna listen outside the tent anyway.
Yeah. And then so there we have the we have the outpost mission where, some stuff happens. We see the flyers this time. Some more people die. Dizzy fucking throws a grenade into the mouth of a tanker. One of the most badass things that happens the entire movie. And then like turns around and the plot comes at her with a fucking laser scope to kill her.
It's such a bummer, dude, because like the triumphant moment of her like getting that big fucker with the grenade and then turning around like, I got it, and you're like screaming at her. This is the Scream Queen moment where you're like, oh my god, there are more bugs. Like, you can't turn your back on this.
You just had sex. This is a horror movie, basically. You're gonna die.
You're and she dies. For fucking death.
And she died. And they haul her onto the landing craft, inexplicably piloted by Carmen and the other dude.
Yeah, why is Carmen there? We don't know. It doesn't make any sense. She's
because
supposed
this
to be
movie only has 5 people in it.
Yeah,
except for all the extras. And then Dizzy dies, and she fucking says like, "It's okay that I'm dying now because I got to have you." And I'm like,
yeah,
Dizzy,
you do better.
you deserve a better movie than this because you're the most capable person in this whole goddamn movie.
Yeah.
And you spent the entire movie inexplicably wanting this like flat toast man.
Yeah, a piece of white bread.
Yeah.
Wonder bread ass man.
It's just like,
God damn it. I would treat her right.
Yeah, like fucking the movie that centers like this is again reinforces my idea that when this movie is trying to be itself and not trying to be Starship Troopers, it succeeds because Dizzy isn't a character from the book at all. They just they slap a name on her.
They made her up.
Yeah, they made her up. And like she's like when they did that, they make an interesting character. She's like a super competent like football player and then also like also, you know, just like super athletic and all these things. Yeah, she has the good ideas. She's like the most competent person. Like if I'm script doctoring this thing, like I could have the exact same movie up until the moment that she like right up until somewhere in the range of those outpost areas. And when Ratchet comes up to Johnny and is like, I need a sergeant or whatever. And he's like, I'm your man. If at that moment he was just like, no, dude, like I'm dumb.
Why are you talking to me? Go to Dizzy.
Like you've been ignoring Dizzy this whole time, who is so much more competent than me. And then like have him like step away from what he wants, which is a promotion in order to make sure that she is the right person in the right job. And then in the next scene, pay that off by like having her be more competent than they've ever been before and like save a bunch of people's lives. And I'm like, that's a movie that says a thing. It's not the movie, not what you're doing, but like it says a thing in the way that this movie kind of doesn't.
Right. Well, and I think like poor Dizzy, her character is done a disservice by like one of her main character driving like points and characteristics is wanting that D from Johnny so bad.
Yeah.
Because why? Like, first of all, it doesn't sell because he's the way that he is. Yeah. And second of all, she's got a lot else going for her that could have made that character more convincing overall, because it just doesn't follow to me that she like follows him to boot camp because she wants the D so bad, when in fact she would just have been a very good soldier and like been able to do the job well. Yeah.
Or like, you could almost not change the script, just a couple of lines, and have it be that she isn't concerned. Like she doesn't want the D, but like she happens to follow Johnny there, and he's so convinced that she wants the D. Like that, like he's so self-absorbed that he thinks that, and he keeps rejecting her, and she's like, "Dude, I don't care.
Give a fuck about you.
Like it's fine. Like and I'm like, that also says a thing about like our main character who like has to make this story about him because like the only reason why she would be at boot camp is because she's following me. But the real answer is that like, no, she saw what was happening and wanted to fucking help out, you know, and she's a good soldier. And like, that's also a thing you could say with this movie, but instead they do the boringest thing.
Yeah. Well, and it's very like, it's so when you said like, oh yeah, homeboy was like, oh, I had some high school experiences, I'll just put them in this movie. It really, really feels like that. Yeah. But Dizzy is like such a specific type of like Rambo girl character who, so, okay, funny personal story. My mother did a year of ROTC when she was in college because her father was like a career Navy man. He loved being in the Navy. He was so convinced that she would enjoy it that he was like, tell you what, I will pay for all of your schooling as long as you do ROTC for a year. And if you like it, you'll stay in and they'll pay. And if you don't like it, you can drop out, I'll pay. But he was convinced that she would love it. And she hated it. She was like so fucking over it after a year. She's like, there were other women, but they were all that like Rambo type where they were so macho and they were like, they wanted to hang with the guys and be cool. But that meant that they were just like rancid to other women. And it was like a whole fucking thing. So she hated it. She dropped out after a year. She turned in her special order tiny combat boots they had to order for her. Her platoon sergeant was furious. He was like, you have the best grades than everyone in my platoon. And she was like, yeah, but I simply hate it. Yeah, I'm not doing it. And then my grandfather stopped speaking to her for like a year. But he got over it. He did pay. It was all, you know, it squared up in the end. But it's funny because I know those people exist who are like the women who want to hang so bad with the boys that they like sort of turn tail on the other women in their life.
The common parlance is the pick-me girl, I guess now.
Yeah. Yeah, my 13-year-old ceramic student had to explain to me what that was. I was like, what the hell is a pick-me girl?
This might have been a little bit after me, but like I remember it being I'm not like other girls.
Not like other girls is what it was when I was a kid.
Yeah. Which is I mean, like, I actually kind of don't want to criticize kids who are doing that, because that's such a like common thing of like, it's just like some people, when you don't grow out of stuff like that is when, you know, that's when it turns into a problem. But like young kids being dumb and like doing dumb shit and like having bad opinions is just like, that's so fucking normal.
It's normal. Yeah. Well, but there's also something in a kernel in here somewhere, right? Yeah. Of like people who, when they're young, sort of manifest as pick-me girls. I'm making big quote marks again, or you know, like, I'm not like other girls, and then they grow up, and it turns out it's because they're not a girl, and they just didn't have the vocabulary for that. Like that was me when I was a kid. I was out here like, oh yeah, all my friends are boys, and like I just fit in better with boys and all this shit. And I had like friends who were female as well, but I grew up to be extremely non-binary, and then I was like, oh, well, I maybe should have realized when I was a child that the reason I didn't feel like a girl and didn't feel comfortable being feminine in certain ways and around people who were feminine in certain ways is because I wasn't feminine in those ways, and I'm still not feminine in those ways.
But like,
it's just funny.
And there's also a way, like there's also a way for like, I don't know, it's the language just doesn't exist in a lot of ways for young people to really express some of these ideas. Because like what they're trying to say with I'm not like other girls can be so different based on the person. You know, sometimes that means like I really am not like other girls, and sometimes it means that like I have internalized the idea that women are something you don't want to be. You know? Yeah,
exactly. There's a lot of shades of not like other girls that are possible.
It's a broad brush that like can encompass a lot of things, and like part of learning what you mean by that kind of stuff is growing up, you know, becoming,
because it could be like toxic masculinity stuff and like, you know, internalized misogyny and all these things. And then it could also be that you're trans. You don't know. You won't find out till you're older.
Like trying.
I don't think Dizzy's trans though. Like Dizzy, as much as she was like sprung out of nowhere, fully formed like Athena with the name of a dead man from the book. Like there are characters I think it's interesting to like read a little cheeky trans narrative into, and then Dizzy's like you can if you want to, but I don't read it.
Yeah, I'm not there. That being said, the fact that she came out of a male character and the original version of the script or the original version of the story involves a completely male, all male mobile infantry, mobile infantry, presents to me an interesting version of the script. I don't think this would work now, but in the 90s. How fucking bold would it have been if Dizzy had been a dude the whole time? Yeah. And then just everything plays out basically the same?
Yeah, know? Except she's, Dizzy the guy, like, I need to jump on that dick so bad.
I want to jump on the dick so bad. And then, like, eventually, Ratchak is like, hey, dude, that fucking, like, go fuck that dude.
That guy is, like, he wants it so bad. I can't believe you haven't noticed.
Yeah. And then, like, Johnny's like, okay, I guess I will. And he fucking does. Like now that's not that, I mean, like, that's not revolutionary now, but in the 90s, oh my God.
In the 90s, it would have been.
It would have been amazing. People would have lost their shit. If you want to be transgressive, Paul Verhoeven, that's the movie.
That's what you should have done. Now, we would have lost out on, like, the Dizzy that we did get, who I like as a character. But, man, what a fun version of that to be. Like, I think the stuff about, like, following him to the army and like getting into the same platoon on purpose because how horny he was would have been like a way more compelling story. In that case,
in that, like, in the version, like, if I want to script doctor it, if Dizzy stays a female character, then like I really downplay like her following Rico around, or like I don't know how that can't be her only motivation, you know, because she's such a more interesting character. And then, but like in the version where we retcon it back to being a man, I think the fact that he's so fucking horny really works.
It really, really works. All of a sudden, I'm like all the way here for it. Yeah. It's so funny.
It's so dumb, but like it people are.
But I would
sometimes.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. You know, and honestly, because you change the gender dynamics of like so often in media, women are portrayed as like being secondary to a man and like having to follow what, you know, like that. You no longer, you drop that baggage when it's two dudes.
Well, because you have different baggage now. Like if it's bro Dizzy showing up to camp and being like, this guy who's like otherwise very competent, but his one downfall is he is blinded by how bad he wants that D.
Yeah.
And then he's also still making all these other calls and like, you know, leading the platoon more effectively than Johnny ever could, but still getting passed up for promotions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Then you're still saying something.
Yeah, you're still saying a thing, and you just got to lean into that.
But it's not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and even then, I still like the version of it where like Johnny eventually realizes what a dipshit he is and like steps aside and lets Dizzy.
It's like,
and,
man, this hot twink who's been here this whole time.
Yeah,
like, just...
and we end up with like, you know, Lieutenant Flores and then like Sergeant Rico or something like that at the end of the story, and like they're like this badass battle couple who like, you know,
oh
like,
man,
like there's a cool way to go there, you know.
I have to bring something up really quick that doesn't really have much to do with Starship Troopers other than okay, I'm about to show my ass. Actually, I may have talked about this on a podcast with you before. There is a webcomic called Starfighter.
Okay.
It's just a porn webcomic. Like it's about like a sleek sci-fi military where all of these like starfighter pilots work in pairs, and it's like one navigator and one gunner basically. Yeah. And all of the pairs of guys are like bonded soulmate like pairs of guys, and that's the premise of the whole thing. And later you find, this is a big spoiler, but later you find out the reason it has to be two pairs of guys who are fucking each other is because the ships run, like their drives run on gay love basically.
I love it.
It's so goofy.
Yeah. I mean, like,
but like I'll eat that shit up. It's delicious. I'm eating that food. It's so dumb, but I love it.
Yeah, I have not come across this. That's so fun.
Yeah, I don't know why you would have, but
I mean, I don't know.
You know,
but like one thing that's we've got so much dumb straight media that like
that's what I'm saying.
But
sometimes
like,
you just want the goofy gay shit.
Yeah, but I'm saying like let the gays have their dumb stuff too. You know, like when it's just like it's just like this is rad actually, and like let's throw old toxic tropes in here and just see how they rattle around when we change things up.
It's super toxic, especially at the outset of this story. It's like, wow, these vibes are horrible. Like, there's so much like power station abuse going on. Like, it's really wild, but it's fun. It's a fun time.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we've covered movie Flores. Okay. What else do we want to cover? There's just so much here. Okay.
Here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
There's a scene in the book that I want to make sure we cover, regardless of what else gets covered here. And it is the scene where he reunites with his dad.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. So again, I think this is the thesis of the book because we didn't really cover the plot of the book. It's mostly the same as the plot of the movie, but like there's so less action in it. It's mostly just like,
it's not a war story really.
Yeah. I mean, it's a war story. It's not a battle story. Like it doesn't have any action in it. It's about like the drudgery of war and how like
rather than the like brutal horrors of war, it's like a totally different type of war story.
But unlike the movie, like in the movie, his parents are very much against him joining the service. His dad like disowns him and like can't even talk about him. And then his mom dies at Buenos Aires. Johnny assumes that his dad has died too, because the person who tells him that his mom died was his mom's sister, who just like would not even have mentioned his dad because she hated him.
Even if he was dead.
Yeah, she wouldn't have cared. So he just assumes that like because his parents always went someplace together, they'd be dead. So he's just like written off his whole family. He's been like, my family is the mobile infantry now. I'm a mobile infantry man. That's what I do forever. And then he's going off to officer candidate school, and a like guy taps him on the shoulder and says like, hey, is that boat for the Roger Young? And he turns around and it's his dad. Who's like,
and he's like, oh my God, Dad. Yeah. And they burst into tears.
They burst into tears and like kiss each other. And then like they go to talk for a while. And so like, but they're like a ship's passing in the night thing. And we find out that like the reason why his dad was so pissed at him for joining the mobile infantry is because his dad always kind of secretly harbored that he should have done this, that he should have gone off and become a man.
He feels like guilty and ashamed that he didn't do it sooner.
And then he's like, oh my God, my boy can do this. And I couldn't. And when the mom is killed, he's like, fuck it, that's it, I'm done, and like gives his business over to like his like number 2 man, and then goes and joins the mobile infantry at what must be like the age of like 40. Like he is an old dude. but fucking makes
okay,
it.
because he says he was 22 when he had Johnny, and Johnny's now 18 or whatever.
Johnny, I think by my count, he's actually 20.
Okay, so
because,
like some time has gone by.
Yes, because at least a year has gone by. 2 years.
So
almost.
he's what, 42?
Yeah. Yes.
Joining up.
Yeah, you got it right.
So the other interesting thing about the dad, I think, is that he, like, the way that he speaks to Johnny and like the whole his attitude around Johnny going off to join up at the beginning is a little tonally different in the book. It's not as like harsh and vitriolic as in like, oh, I don't know how to describe. Like in the book, he's more of sort of like a calm paternalistic antagonist to Johnny in the beginning.
I would say I would change it very slightly. Patronizing.
Yeah, very patronizing. Yeah. It's like, son, you just don't know what's good for you. You're gonna drop out. It's not gonna work out. Like, just save us all the trouble and don't like do this right now. And in the movie, he's very like, I will kick you out of my fucking house. Like, do not come back if you do this. And he's like more aggressive about it at the outset. But I think it's really interesting that in the movie, that character does not come back. Like, he gets killed when Buenos Aires gets
we watch him die, basically.
Blown up. Yeah. And then in the book, like, reuniting with him is like this beautiful, touching moment for both of them, because they parted on bad terms and they haven't spoken since. Like, he's gotten calls from his mom, or like letters from his mom. Yeah. But his father's never written him. And she's like telling him in these letters, like, yeah, it's because he misses you and he's really upset and he still hasn't really forgiven you, or like he wishes he could forgive you, but he can't. And so he can't write to you yet. It's too painful. She tells him all this in the letter. And then his mother dies. And then you find out too that his dad was also a wife guy, because he's like, I got along with your mom like way better than most people get along with their wives. I didn't feel like she was a ball and chain. I loved her. Like when I lost her, I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna join the army. Like the wife guy pops out. Like
yeah. And also like this, like I feel like I missed my chance because I met my wife before. I should have done this before so that I could have, but like by the time I loved her, I'm like, I'm not going to leave her for this thing I think I should have done. So he's like felt trapped. So he's like, okay, well now I'm going to go off and do the thing that I should have always done and join the mobile infantry and become a meathead. And like, this is, I do not, so there's certain things about the father character I don't understand. So for example, he's Harvard educated, right? And like, but yet is very clearly in the story only going to ever be a sergeant. Is kind of the way it ends off. But I'm like, dude, like this dude, like they should be like, he should already be an officer candidate school based off of like what they've been talking about. Like this is a smart.
He should have skipped straight to officer school.
This guy who used to run a giant mobile like multi-billion-dollar corporation. Like how did they not see this guy coming in through boot camp? Be like, okay, he's going to spend like 1 week as a private, then he's going to be a corporal, then he's going to be a sergeant, then we're going to send him over to the officer candidate school, and then he's going to be a field marshal by the time we're done here. Because like this is a guy who knows how to run an organization. But that's fine. It doesn't match with the themes, because the theme is that like Johnny is so much of a man by this point that he has inspired his own father to become a better man. That's the actual like thrust of the narrative, right? Which is such a, I don't know. That's
where it maybe tips into satire for me. It's like where we're going, oh yeah, Johnny's such a big man now. Even his own dad is emasculated by him.
It's not satire. It's like, it is so earnest is the thing. Is that it's so earnestly.
It's crazy. It's
selling a particular kind of masculinity to a particular audience, where it's like, yeah, if you go off and do this, like, not only will you like, you know, is it the grandest thing you can do to put your, you know, precious body between a beloved home and the desolation of war? Like, not only is that the highest thing you could possibly do, but like your own father will want to follow in your footsteps. That's how badass you are. Which is, I mean, like that's a fucking take, but
it's a take.
Yeah, it's a take. That being said, I don't know. I kind of like the scene, because Johnny is like not just like the like least observant person in the world. He's also incredibly not introspective. He has such a lack of introspection that he is I've been hearing his voice the entire book, and I still have very little idea how his mind actually works, because he doesn't understand how his own mind works.
His mind don't be working.
No.
It is smooth. The ball of his brain is rolling around the inside of his skull. Like,
to the point where he even is talking, like asking himself the questions he should have asked like 2 years ago, where he's like, why did I join the mobile? Like, why did I do this? I don't really understand.
Oh yeah. Readers, by the way, listeners, in the book, he joins up because Carl joins up because he wasn't friends with Carmen originally. Carl is his best homie, his closest homie, who is like, I want to go be in the military. And he's like, oh my God, I will go with Carl.
That's definitely one interpretation of it. He also, no, but like, I'm not entirely sure he does join up for Carl either, because like they know they're not going to go to the same unit. So they're not going to be together. And then also like, he's like at the moment, up until the moment that he's actually like does the sign up, he's kind of like, no, I'm not going to go. I'm saying that to Carl, but I'm not going to go. But then, like, to his parents, he's like, well, I am going to go, but they think that I'm not going to go. Like, he's still so wishy-washy right up until the very moment. And then it's just like, okay, I guess I'll do it. And then later on, it's like, I guess I'll go career. This is where I live now.
And might as well. He's just like letting it happen.
To the point where he even is asking himself the question. He's like, why did I do this? And then he doesn't really answer the question. He's just kind of like, no. Why did I do that? Oh, well.
Why did I do that?
We'll
never know.
But like,
guess I'll go for officer training. Yeah, whatever.
And like, well, or like he signs up for career, and then like the officer training decision happens off screen. Like we just meet him on his way out. But like seeing his dad, who definitely has like some greater amount of like introspection and emotional intelligence, is like sitting there going like, oh, I understand why I felt the way that I did before all this started. He's talking about how he was miserable running a giant corporation, and that he was working with his therapist all of the time and like couldn't figure out what it was the cause. He's like, but truthfully, I really knew what the cause was. I just didn't have an out until like, until your mom died and then you had gone. So I knew that what I must do, like this whole thing. And like basically breaking it down to like, because he says, he's like, I knew I should have gone off and done this to prove that I was a man and be more than just like a capitalist consumer part of this thing. I should have gone to what I think is a higher purpose. And in the universe of the book, a higher purpose is to be in the military and to save your planet, right? So like he is the moment where like we see a version of Johnny who actually is unable to understand why he does the things that he does, instead of the version of Johnny we actually see all the time, who's just kind of like, I guess I'm going this way now.
God,
just completely
bouncing along.
Blind. Yeah. He's just like kind of following the just getting blown by the wind, basically. But like, so it's like, I really do like the scene. Also, I like the fact that they're like actually sweet to each other. That's something that like, one of the very few times that like he ever gets any like positive feedback from a man, like anywhere.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's really interesting because like, in the book, as we spoke about earlier, the sort of use of violence as a love language in these books, and like the tough love military, like, okay, I'm behaving this way toward you because I'm caring for you in the only way that I know how to do, which is to beat the shit out of you until I know you can take it, and that you can take it from people who aren't me. And like having the last we'd seen of his father being like, oh, son, you don't know what's good for you. You'll realize, like, blah, blah, blah. And then hearing from the mother, like, he cannot admit how bad he feels like he fucked up and failed you, and how much he misses you, and how much he wishes he could rectify all of this. He can't admit it. He can't even talk about it, all this shit. And then to have him, like, embrace and kiss his son and burst into tears feels overblown almost in that moment. It's like, wow, we have walked all the way over to the other end of like actual real human emotion being demonstrated by this guy and by Johnny, who also has not acted this way any other point in the book. And so it's like, but it is touching.
It's super. It's and part of me wonders if would the book be improved by that being a more common thing, where like he does have like positive emotional relationships with the men around him, who often all very much matter to him. The closest thing we get is the way they talk about the lieutenant, where like like the language they use for Lieutenant Ratchak, apparently the whole unit is just like in love with this dude. They love him so much. They would
all die for him like in a moment.
And they do that because they know that he loves them back. And like that he like frets over them and like worries about all of them and like will not leave the planet if any of them are not on the ship. Like,
yeah, that's a crazy difference also between the book and the movie is like they are completely prepared to leave anybody and everybody behind.
Yes.
On
and it's
any planet.
Yeah. Oh, and shoot you yourself if you don't do your job.
And
I will shoot you yourself.
Shoot you themselves.
Yeah.
But like in the book, it's so like we do not leave unless we have everybody, even the corpse. We can get the corpse back. We will.
Yeah.
It's very different.
It's like 100% wrong, and it's like not wrong, but it's 100% like the other way. Like they've just completely done a 180 reverse on the like main character qualities of that character.
Yeah, it's wild.
It's very strange. And so yeah, but like I like that there's a certain part of like accurately depicting the way that men treat each other in this book. Like this is very like all of that. Like we're gonna rag on you because we love you is that's something that gets taught to you, from birth as a young man, and it feels
toxic masculinity starts at birth.
Yeah, yeah, and it feels super accurate. And I mean, obviously that's the way that, that is the way that men have communicated up until, not up until, but for the most part. And
yeah, still to this day, a lot of them.
Yeah. And so, but also like, I know that like seeing that scene with his dad where like they were able to express these things to each other openly and like, talk about their feelings and all those things, that to a certain extent also is like, oh geez, that's not something I haven't seen in fiction elsewhere. Just like even one moment of like within the rest, saying that like within the rest of all of this, there is a place where you can have that with another man is like kind of revolutionary in and of itself. If depending on what kind of young man you are.
Yeah, no, totally.
And so like, I'm glad that it is included. And I wonder if it would be better or worse to have more or less of it, because like if it had more of it, would I have identified less with it? Like if I had seen more of that, would this book not have struck me the same way because it seems unrealistic? But to have one moment of it is like, I don't know. I can't.
I think the single moment of genuine human, like oh my God, what word am I thinking of? Like without pretense.
Yes.
Like the rituals have all been stripped away. It's just two guys who are really glad to see each other again.
Yeah.
That one single moment of that existing in the book really throws into such sharp contrast all of the rest of the masculine behavior in the rest of the book. I think if there had been more of those like human moments of connection between Johnny and whoever other guys, it wouldn't have hit the same A, and B, it would have said very different things about the society and about the way that like men communicate with each other in that society. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about like, because the whole thesis of this entire season of this show that we're actually doing now is like, what can we take away from these works that like mean like what? So I'm thinking about like, if I was going to do a Starship Troopers, which fucking whoever owns that IP, I think it's still Sony, fucking give me $1 billion. I'll make you the best show of all time. It'll be a 10 episode HBO like, premier television show. I will fucking get you some Emmys. I will spend all of your money. It will not make money, by the way. Also, you're going to lose all that money, but it's going to be fucking amazing.
But it'll so worth it.
It'll be so good. But yeah, like if I was going to do it, like how would I do it? And I'm thinking about like, cause now like I wouldn't want to do I would feel a responsibility to tell something a little bit different than like, this is the way it is. Because I would show they're part of my body, part of my own instinct is like, no, I got to show at least a little bit of how it could be. Right. And that means that like you have to put more in. Now maybe it's like you meet your dad, he meets his dad, and then we open the floodgates or something like that, where it's like he's seen this and he goes, oh man, that means so much to me that like I was able to have this moment with my dad. Is there a reason, like these other guys are my family, is there a reason why I don't do it with them? And then like maybe that's what makes him a good commander as Lieutenant Rico, later on.
Yeah, he's kissing the homies on the mouth after this.
Oh,
I have an agenda, and it's kissing the homies on the mouth.
Why not? I mean, as I was reading it this last time, I was thinking about like, man, this is so 1950s, heterosexual straight guy, like heteronormativity to the max, doesn't ever consider the fact that like, but also Johnny Rico is so incredibly obtuse that like they like the dudes could be in the next bunk over fucking each other, and I don't think he would have noticed.
He would not notice. He would not give.
It could the mobile infantry could be the 500 band of thieves who like are gay ass lovers who love each other so much, and he would just not know.
He would not know. I'm thinking about like this is kind of a wild pull, but I did several years of high school astronaut training camp in Hutchinson, Kansas. There's a NASA center there.
Cool.
And it was super cool, but there's a cool museum in the basement of that facility that is like all space flight history stuff. Uh-huh. And there's a really cute little exhibit about these two astronauts. I don't remember their names, the early astronauts. And it's a little like diary entry from one of them who's like, yeah, I can always tell when my partner is like getting nervous when I'm on a spacewalk because he'll start calling me babe. He'll be like, okay, babe, come on back. Pass me that wrench, babe. You're doing great. Come on inside, babe. Just leave it. Nope. The flare's coming. You got to come in, babe. Like,
that is so sweet.
I think about that so much.
That's so sweet.
It's so sweet. So like that shit existed like in that time period even, but it's just such a
well like there it's not approached at all within Starship Troopers, but there is there's a whole genre of like a particular kind of story that we're going to tell where we're allowed to show the like emotional intimacy between men because we are in war or sports. Like, right. And like if we put it within this context of this thing, we know these guys are straight because they're at war or they're
only like this because there are no women around.
Right. But that gives, because we've crossed so far into what we think is like, okay, we can't, this is unassailably straight now.
Yeah.
That gives us the freedom to actually like express emotions and stuff like that. I mean, to a certain extent, that's it's interesting because when you saw like the reaction to the Lord of the Rings movies is fascinating to me because there was a huge reaction at the time about like, oh man, they made the Hobbits gay. Oh man, they made the Hobbits gay. And like, this is such a gay movie. Everybody's like, but I'm like, have you read the books? Like, this is not different. They like accurately reflect the way that these characters act. And
the Hobbits are just sweet little guys.
Right. But like in the intervening time, like what had happened in the intervening time from when the original books had come out to the early 2000s when the movies were coming out was that like those unassailable fortresses of heterosexuality had become assailed. Like they had, it was much easier to imagine gay characters in these scenarios now because we knew more about what gay people actually were like.
And that they did be existing all that time.
Right. And so I want to
recommend.
Okay,
sorry, go
ahead. So like when it come out, like nobody questioned. They're like, oh yeah, like of course they just love each other very much, and like because they've been through all of this stuff, and it's like this big deep emotional thing. And then by the time you do the exact same thing, but in the 2000s, everybody's like, oh shit, this is gay as hell, and like there's like a recoiling from it now. Or at the time, I think those have also gotten reevaluated, and there are lots of people now are looking at them like, oh man, I don't care if it's gay, but I like the fact that like they are sweet and nice to each other.
Well, and a lot of the queer people I know are like, thank God it's gay. Like this showed me like loving relationships between men in a way that I hadn't seen them before, and like gave me a good example of what that looks like. I really recommend anybody who hasn't read it, go find and look up and read Molly Ostertag, I think is her name, Nate Stevenson's partner, wrote a beautiful retelling of The Lord of the Rings where Sam and Frodo are just in love. And like that's the only thing that's basically different.
Yeah.
Like textually in love with each other. Yeah. And it's so beautiful. I like bawled my eyes out at multiple points reading it. It's so
that's
good.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up because I already know Molly Ostertag's work. She's great. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, and
there's like illustrations, there's little drawings of them being cute and gay. Oh my god, that's so cute.
And so like it's interesting. You could do a version of Starship Troopers that was that now too. Like you could, like, I've gone so far.
I'd watch it.
Yeah, like I don't know. Like the book itself is so like I've been mentioned. I'm still internally struck because I've seen so much discussion of Starship Troopers the movie that then bleeds over into discussions about the book, such that I think that it is essentially impossible to have a good criticism of the book. Not impossible, but you have to try really hard to talk about the book with people because they bleed in this narrative about like this pastiche of fascism and talking about how the book itself is fascist and stuff. And like the book has political problems, but like it is that's not it. Like, that's not like it could fit within that framework. Sure. It could be, but lots of things can be fascism if you use them in a fascist framework, but like it's so concerned with masculinity and like being a man and like what the community, like how it is to like be brought up and then crafted into a man, that that's not the right framework to criticize it. You need to be looking at what it's actually doing rather than trying to think about what Paul Verhoeven, a guy who didn't read the book was doing. And because like that's because like it's so blatantly untrue. Like it presents this version of thing. And I do say, I absolutely do identify with a lot of the stuff that goes on in this book with the idea of like, you can't like a genuine affection between men and two men, even by women sometimes, is like, can only happen within very particular frameworks. And everything other than that needs to be some form of violence is real. Like that is a thing that I have experienced, but like, the book itself doesn't criticize that. It's very clearly the way things are and the way things ought to be, and that's how you make real men. And that's not true. That is so incredibly wrong. And I've like spent the last 40 years like being subject to that and then like trying to unlearn it.
Yeah, like desperately trying to unlearn all that shit.
Yeah. And
there's
like,
a whole section where he goes off about child psychologists and how he's like so mad about child psychologists telling people not to hit their kids. And I'm like, are you okay?
And it's funny. I'm so glad that Heinlein decided to stop writing not kids, but he wrote juveniles is what they were called. But they were like stuff for like, they were put in magazines for like young boys. That was the whole idea. It was in Boy's Life and shit. And eventually he could go to be, because he doesn't understand children at all. He doesn't like, he didn't have them, and he didn't like, he didn't remember what it was like to be one. So like,
obviously.
So like, he has these really weird ideas, and whenever he writes a child character, they're just like a little man. They're just like a smaller adult man.
Well, I feel like this guy himself came out of the womb like 13 years old. You know what I mean? Like he never was a little boy, and you can tell by the way he writes. Yeah,
like I've been rereading some of his stuff. And like he's scared. He doesn't understand. Like in a certain respect, that really works when you're a kid to read a character who's presented as a child but is really a little adult, because that's what you think you are. But it is a fundamental misunderstanding of what a child is like and like what it means to like bring up a child. So like and he eventually abandons that and is like, I mean there are occasionally kids characters in his later books, but like they're weird, man. Can I just
go on?
There's a whole subplot in one of his later books where there's the old guy, Lazarus Long, guy who's lived for thousands of years. That's his whole deal. He never ages and dies. And he's like, I've experienced everything in the universe. I want to kill myself. That's the whole point. He's like, I'm done. I fucking did everything. And I'm over it. There's a bunch of people around him being like, but we love you. We don't want you to kill yourself. So let's come up with some ideas for you to do, some new things. And one of them is, we're going to clone you, but change the gender to female, and then you're going to be able to raise a little you that's a girl. And he's like, okay, that sounds new. Let's do that.
That sounds new.
And I'm like, and then it's like those characters are around, so they're like, because they actually do two of them, so he's got little twins, and like they're little monsters, but like he loves them a lot, and I'm like, I don't understand this whole fucking plot.
What's going on?
And I really need somebody who is not me to like read some of these books so that I can talk to them about it, and you could be like, okay. I don't know.
What's happening here?
Yeah. Like I said, he's weirdly good on LGBT issues. He's got several trans characters who are treated kind of like, that's just a thing that happens sometimes, which is really surprising for a 50s guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, although one of them is, okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to subject you to this, but there is a book called I Will Fear No Evil, in which you have a dying billionaire who's like, the medical technology keeps like keeping me alive, and I am like a former corpse of myself, so I would like to die. So he signs up for a plan whereby if a suitable donor shows up, they will have his brain transplanted into this person as a super like experimental thing. But he does this explicitly as, this is not likely to work. They will allow me to die. I guess suicide comes up a lot in his books. Anyway, we're not going to unpack that right now.
I'm not going to think about that right now.
Yeah. But the body that shows up, and apparently they didn't establish preferences, but the person whose body he's transplanted into is his young secretary who was in a car accident. And so he's put into the body, his old dude's put into the body of a hot young woman. and
Okay.
spends the rest of the book being a hot young woman. And you know what? Fucking is totally fine with it. He's just like, I guess I'm a woman now. Cool. Now I can have sex with dudes without people thinking it's weird. And that's like his main takeaway.
Preach.
Yeah. Which like, oh, okay. But then like,
Okay.
also he's haunted by the ghost of the dead woman whose body he's in, who's not like haunting him like in a, like you took my body way, but like, dude, here's how it'd be a woman, is like, just like giving it like little shoulder advice angel on his shoulder.
God.
It's very strange.
That kind of rips, actually. Hold on.
Yeah. So like, I don't, it's been 20 years since I've read this book. I need to check it again, but like, those are what I'm remembering. And it's a very, so I need to like have queer people read this book and then tell me because I'm sure it's wrong in certain, it doesn't rip in certain ways, but like I need to hear it from like people who know what they're talking about, because I can't hear straight dudes talk about this thing, because it's the queerest fucking book written by a straight guy I've ever come across.
No, absolutely.
You
piqued my interest. I would at least look it up, because that does sound wild in ways that could be really interesting and could just be really offensive. I don't know. I won't know until I read it.
And I'm kind of scared. Eventually the character dies because I think the body rejects the brain, organ style. There's a whole thing, but there's some weird ass shit in it. It's a bonkers book.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So
sick.
All right. What else I feel like there's still stuff we haven't talked about. We talked about the dad finally.
Yeah, we talked about the dad.
Yeah. So no. At some point I also want to watch Showgirls with you, because that's the movie that came out right before this one. It's also Paul Verhoeven. It's the one
not
where
to show my ass, but I have seen none of those other movies you listed of his, not even RoboCop.
Yeah. Showgirls is, do you remember Saved by the Bell?
Very vaguely. I was like a little too young for it.
Okay. So there's like the three girls in there. There's like the preppy girl, the popular girl, and then like the nerdy-ish girl. That was Elizabeth Berkley, and she's like, I want to do serious roles now. And so she signed up for Paul Verhoeven's Showgirls, which is from what I have seen of it, is a trash fire wall to wall. But it turns out that there are a lot of people who love trash fires, and it's gotten like, it's very camp now is the idea.
Okay.
Like it's very like
it's swung back around to being camp.
It's swung back around to people really liking it. And I have not seen it, but I want to watch it with somebody and be like, let's talk about this movie, because it's very strange. But yeah. Okay. I don't know where I was going with that, but
that we should watch Showgirls.
That's why I mentioned Drag Race being the other good thing to happen to Paul Verhoeven's reputation, because I think that like the popularity of drag made people go back to Showgirls, which is basically just straight people doing drag in a lot of ways, or at least the aesthetics of drag carry over.
The camp.
And I think that allowed a reevaluation of that to happen. And so now he's thought of as being a better director than he actually is.
Oh my God. Wild. Yeah. Is there anything that's still bothering you that we haven't talked about?
If you want to watch a better version of Starship Troopers, then go watch the movie Aliens.
So fair.
Yeah. So the James Cameron, when he was making Aliens, he loved Starship Troopers kind of unironically, and was like, hey, gave this book to everybody on the cast who are playing the Space Marines, and we're like, read this book. This is the movie you think you're in. You're not in that movie. You're in a different movie. But here's the movie here's the story you think you're part of. And they give you a background on what these guys are like. And I'm like, when I found out that fact and I was watching Aliens again, I was like, oh yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Oh yeah.
That like, this is, and I kind of like that, where like you've taken characters from one genre of story and shoved them in another, and then they're like,
given them propaganda from a different genre.
Yeah. So they act like they're in an action movie, but they all get killed because they are actually in a horror movie. And I kind of love that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like in Starship Troopers, some of the characters in Starship Troopers are in Aliens.
Yeah.
Like, they are actually in Aliens, but they, like, Johnny Rico isn't. He's in Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
But, like, all of the guys who get killed around him are in Aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're in a different genre, too.
And we didn't even talk about the dogs, which is one of those very interesting stories that gets sublimated by the fact that our character isn't paying attention to them. But like, there's a whole bunch of, they spend a bunch of time talking about the like genetically engineered symbiotic dogs that they've developed for
the canine units, where the dogs and the humans are like, it's like a Dragon Rider situation where if one of them dies, the other one goes mad with pain and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's not in the movie. And it's
all of that to pay off one single moment of horror to me. Like, I think that whole setup where he talks a lot about, because Johnny in the book wants to join the Canine Corps, and the guy is like, like, where's your dog now? And he's like, I don't have a dog. He's like, well, did your dog sleep in your bed with him? And he's like, no. And he's like, okay, if you're not ready to be married to a dog, then you can't be part of this.
If you're not like ride or fucking die for your dog right now, then what are you even here
and
for?
Talking about like this guy apparently was a part of a canine pair, and when his canine partner died, they like kept him sedated for like 6 weeks, and then like had to like put him together with like they had to like sit there and give him like intense therapy for like implied years so that he could function again, and he's still not really back. And that's like this whole thing, and they're like he talks about like the kinder thing to do would be to shoot the man. Like we shoot if the man dies, we shoot the dog. If like the kinder thing to do would be to shoot the man, but we can't do that, so we have to like do our best. And then they talk about later on when they drop on for the first time on Clendathu, every single dog, the canids, when they see a bug, immediately suicides. They have a little bomb so they don't get captured, and every single one of them dies like immediately. And I'm like, oh my God, you have just told me enough information that I can extrapolate the story of what happens to all of like your entire canine corps. All of the men are completely broken men now. Like you have all of these dudes who like all of their partners all at once. And like, you don't have the infrastructure to deal with that shit. And like, like, I'm like, oh my God, there is such a tragic story right there that you only told me like
right off screen where Johnny doesn't give a shit about it. Like
he never mentions it, but I'm sitting here being like, oh my God, I feel so bad for all. Like
you're a dog guy too. You're out here like that would be me. I'm the canine unit guy who got my dog killed.
I know, and like
shit.
Like it's like, oh my God, just like this one moment of like, oh fucking hell.
Yeah, God, that's fucked up.
And what's the name of the planet where they have their R&R on in the books?
Sanctuary?
Sanctuary, yes. Where there's a giant long discussion about how like this planet is around a star that doesn't produce enough radiation. And in 1950s understanding of science, which is not true, just not true, that means that that nothing on this planet is going to evolve very quickly. And so there's this whole discussion about like, is it like, should people on this planet like irradiate themselves so they can have mutations and like therefore that they
develop as a species?
To develop as a species, which is like an interesting conjecture, but also just completely wrong. Like it's just everything about this entire conjecture is wrong because like that's not how DNA work.
That was so bonkers. I feel like this is the part of the book where I was listening late at night trying to finish in time to do this podcast, and I started nodding off around that point where I was like, what the hell is he talking about? I
mean, like it dovetails into some of the philosophy in the book about how like there are going to be times when humanity by nature is going to rub up against other species. If you want to extrapolate symbolism out from this, you can talk about like this is the height of the Cold War. So like America versus the communist West is a whole thing. And like the fact that the bugs are a quote unquote perfect communism. I mean, that's not on accident. Like he's saying some stuff about
there's like in their history lessons and stuff, they talk about, like, oh yeah, the union against the like communist China like state that has developed, and you get all this like extrapolated false history about that.
So like there's a whole message in there, which like again, I'm like the criticisms of the movie don't dovetail well with that, but there are criticisms to be done within that of like, is conflict inevitable? And like, it's very much obviously the theory of the book itself that like conflict is inevitable. You will have to do it. You better be good at it, because if you don't, you're going to get killed. It's like, that's
you better
like
be the best at it.
Yeah. You better be the best because somebody will come along better than you and otherwise. And like, that's kind of morally right in a lot of ways, but if not even right, at least unavoidable. That's not like looking at the way that our outlook on the world is now. Like that's just not true. Like there are times when like, I don't know. I can't say that I am a 100% in all cases pacifist person in my own philosophy. Like that, that is not in terrible, or being unwilling to fight back does mean that you will get steamrolled by somebody who's willing to fight. Doesn't mean that that's right. It's just the lesser of two evils in a lot of ways. It's a much more nuanced approach, but like, right. But like for sure, his idea of like, we better be ready to stomp other people, otherwise we won't. And you're absolutely right. You brought it up before I could about like, he was mad about the fact that the U.S. wasn't ready to use nuclear weapons like kind of at the drop of a hat. He was like kind of warmongering, and that comes through like all the way through this book. It's like very clear, like, and which is gross to a modern ear, to my ears now. But like that being said, I am not immune to, the coolness
Propaganda.
of a super badass soldier. Like, I fucking love that shit. But
I love Mass Effect.
yeah,
I
man.
love to be Commander Shepard.
Yeah. And like, well, man, Mass Effect takes from this too. I mean, like
totally.
the Reapers and all of that is not yeah. I mean, like
oh my God, what are the like bug
the arachnids
guys in Mass Effect?
The Arachni, not the Arachnids, the Arachni.
The Arachni, yes.
Yeah, the Arachni. Yeah, so it's like, come on, you're just gonna do it. It's just like, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, and the buggers from Ender's Game. Yeah, and there's, I mean, like, that's another one of those things that like he did. I don't know that he's the first person to do that, but this was an immensely popular book when it came out. So it's definitely like a bunch of ideas coalesced into a certain thing. And like, you can look around and find Starship Trooper clones I mean, like fucking Halo is also like, it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous to this point. So like being unwilling to grapple with the value within this book is unfortunate. Like I would love to do another, like there's some stuff in this story that I would love to do another pass at myself and that I probably should be thinking about, because it's not like the concepts of gender and how people communicate with each other are like a million miles off from It Takes a Wolf. So like probably some shit I should be thinking about how men are created and used for war. Like, I mean, like,
are we, okay, wait, hold on. Are we,
Editor Scott here. This is the point in the conversation where we just fully talked about one of my upcoming projects and basically did an episode of a different podcast called Behind the Locked Doors where we talk about that. So I just kind of excised like an entire half-hour section here and put that over on that feed. And then we're going to drop back in after all of that was talked about for a while and sort of sum up here. So, hey, look, this episode could have been longer. That's all I'm saying. Okay. We've been at this for 3.5 hours almost. So
I'm getting kind of sweaty in my little closet.
Yeah, I think, and I'm out of water and stuff, and I need a break for lunch. Like it's like 2 p.m.
We should eat a meal, maybe.
Yeah, I probably should. Like, okay, so I don't know if that whole thing about It Takes a Wolf is going to be part of this episode, or if we're going to cut it out and put it on the other one. So it's possible that like I'm now cutting this out right now and putting it at the end, or like that we're now cutting in. I don't know what's going on. So like. But as of right now, we are back into the real episode for sure. So, because just so that we can say like our final thoughts about these two pieces of property. And so, is there anything you want to like, what's your takeaway from either or both of these pieces of media?
That I've seen your underwear now. No, it's that like I really appreciate the impetus to actually consume this piece of media finally, because it is very like cornerstone foundational to all of modern sci-fi basically, and I feel like a huge puzzle piece of like every other piece of sci-fi media I've ever consumed has slotted into place now, having read this movie and seen this book. It's been 3.5 hours, everyone. It was very enlightening, even if it was a wild bonkers ride.
Well, it's like if you ever watch, have you ever seen Citizen Kane?
Nope.
So if you ever watch Citizen Kane, half of the jokes in The Simpsons make sense all of a sudden. Or like it's one of those things where it's like it's such a cornerstone piece of media that like other pieces of media make more sense.
I love intertextuality. I love it when pieces of media reference other pieces of media, and I feel like having consumed this piece of media has enhanced my appreciation for many other pieces of media.
I would if you felt like reading more Heinlein, ask me for recommendations. If that comes up, you're like, I want to see what more about this guy is about. Because I can give you some guidance in towards like the things that like some of them are like Stranger in a Strange Land is super influential, but also like I'm not sure that it's the one that I would recommend anybody read because it's very strange. It's very hippie. It's like almost the antithetical point to this one. It's like this whole thing. It's a very Martian Jesus kind of thing going on there.
Wow.
With tattooed ladies and stuff. It's bonkers. But I think I would love to hear your input on it. I Will See No Evil, or like,
that I'm really interested in looking into, because it does sound like there's a fascinating discussion to be had about that.
And so far, the only thing I've ever seen in response to that one is yikes. but I'm like, but there's stuff going on here.
There's something in there.
There's something in here.
Dig around a little bit. There's something in there.
So if you want to go into Heinlein, I can give you recommendations. I would stay away from blah 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 and all that stuff. But,
yeah.
So if you want to do more, and also the same thing with Verhoeven, because he's also like super influential.
I should see RoboCop. It's goofy that I haven't watched RoboCop.
Well, like actually,
and
Total Recall, I'd actually recommend more than RoboCop because you know Philip K. Dick, who's the one that was based off of. So like
Android's Dream of Electric Sheep.
Yeah, that's right. We had a whole discussion about it. So Total Recall is based off of We Can Remember It For You Wholesale by Philip K. Dick. So it's
I've heard of that. Okay.
So it's got some weirdness baked into it in a way that RoboCop kind of doesn't. And to that end, it's also like fully into just being a goofy movie where there's like three-titted three-titted women, and like
hell yeah,
it's bonkers, and it's not taking itself super seriously, and it's a bit weirder. So I'd actually like, that's the one that I think you would love.
Okay,
and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger being his most Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's great.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. So okay, yeah, super consequential movie, or not movie, but his work is interesting. And then Heinlein's like one of the big three. And so having some context for him is useful in terms of other science fiction people. I like the thing that I'm taking away from it is that like just don't adapt things that you don't like. If you're not meaning to adapt, like it's not something you can tack on.
If you're not so hype about adapting something, make your own shit. Like, God damn it. I'm always saying that. And like, because I'm super here for this movie when it's doing its own thing. Yeah, totally.
And it tried, or like, I don't know. It's one of those things where like, if you just abandoned all pretense, even if it had still been called Starship Troopers, but you just gave up all the character names and references to the plot and stuff and just let it be its own thing, I still would be here for it. It's not the name that bothers me. It's that like you diluted what that movie could have been by trying to make it Starship Troopers, and you didn't even approach trying to make Starship Troopers the movie. So why bother? Like,
why call it Starship? Well, you explained why it was a like marketing decision.
Yeah, it was a marketing decision, but like it also had these plot consequences where they tacked on this giant early section of this movie that like feels like it's only there because they want to follow over like the boot camp sequence, and they want to cover a little bit of the stuff with Carl Jenkins and all that stuff. But it's like, you could have cut that way down. You could have like gotten us to the points where this movie starts to pop off sooner, and we could have spent more time in its own original IP, and we would have I think it would have been really good movie, and that being said, there are certain things about it which I still love and that I'm happy to take away from him. But yeah, I definitely don't think it's the satire masterpiece that people claim it is. I think it's I think it's Baby's first satire. I'm trying to think if I could even recommend like a proper takedown of fascism. I mean, like, honestly, like, if you want a trashy action movie that properly takes down fascism, watch V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a good movie.
Yeah, that's a good movie. It's like, and that like actually says some shit about fascism in a way that Starship Troopers just doesn't.
Natalie Portman is there with her shaved head. She looks amazing. Yeah. Like, it's all dubs.
Yeah. Yeah. Like,
I don't know if that's actually true. It's been a minute since I've seen that.
No, she's great. Yeah. 100% totally recommend V for Vendetta, and that is also as relevant today as it was when it came out. So like, yeah, fucking.
And I feel like I've heard that that's a good adaptation of the source material as well.
Ooh, I think it's better than the source material.
Interesting. Okay.
Alan Moore is one of those creators that I think says interesting stuff, but that people spend too much time sucking his dick.
Sure. Because
he is not as good as everybody says he is. But he's interesting. He does interesting stuff, and I I do. Man, that's a whole nother thing. We've been at this for so long. We're like supposed to be wrapping this up. So okay, yeah.
I'm like in my closet sweating right now. You can see the sheen of my sweat.
Let things be what they are, and also like, when I can still like Starship Troopers the book. It's fine. It's still there for me. And also like
the movie.
Again, I still think that engaging with stuff like Starship Troopers the book, which is, like I said, it's there are some giant yikes in this book, and stuff that like that's just a whole thing, but like engaging with them and understanding why it's like that, and why does it have to be like that, and like what can you take away from it anyway, and all these things, like that's all super important to like understanding how to like put your own point of view into the world, and can be super useful. So like it's not don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes you got to get in there with sometimes you got to drink the bathwater because like
guzzle that shit down.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to guzzle that bathwater shit down because like, that's the only way you learn about it. Like you can't, if you just throw it all away, you also throw away all opportunity to improve both yourself and also art in general. So, and
understand what about the art it is that isn't working or is bothering you or is morally reprehensible or whatever.
Yeah. Like when you like, would Starship Troopers be a better book if they just didn't do all of the child beating, like justification, and I'm like, yeah, probably.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
That's possible.
Like, it's not intrinsic. It's just something that Robert Heinlein felt strongly about. And so shoved it in there.
Well, and this is like my absolute last point here. It's hard to tell, especially when the author is dead, whether that was something that they genuinely believed was morally correct or whether this was part of the satire and being like, oh yeah, I'm going to go on this big long rant about beating kids and how like we absolutely should be doing that, morally speaking. Otherwise, society will be corrupt. And it's like, okay, well, did you believe that for real? Or are you just saying shit?
Yeah,
banging away at your typewriter.
Robert Heinlein is the answer. One of his answers is that he probably believed it at the time and then never felt beholden to it ever again because, like, that guy went from being a communist to being a libertarian over the course of his career. So, like, and again, death of the author. The author is dead. Let's take away from it what we actually just.
Homeboy is dead.
And like, look at the things that make sense and that because like I can look at Starship Troopers and understand why I feel like why it sells to me because it does things that society has done to me. Like, I've lived parts of that same life and understand what it means. And also I have to understand that the way that it's like, it's selling that to me and it's using that narrative to work, but that I don't have to take away its conclusions about that narrative. And I can look about like, would this book be better if we had more conversations like Johnny with his father talking about their like feeling, like the most basic thing, like would Johnny have been a better person if he had like had some introspection and willing to like talk about his emotions with some people is like, yeah, honestly, that book would be better, like legitimately in every way be better if like he just had some more emotional intelligence. And in fact, because it's first person, we could see him develop that over the course of the novel. It would be super cool.
You could have written that book.
Yeah. And maybe I will write that book. I don't know.
Right. I mean, okay. Again, I keep saying this is my last point, but you've already done that type of work in Breathing Space where I can see it, like just having two men speak to each other honestly and without pretense and without all of the intricate rituals about their traumas and their experiences and all that shit. Like, hey, everybody, go listen to Fable of the Family, which is airing right now. There's one more episode to go. It's really, really good. And there's stuff in there about the ways that men relate to each other that are gentle and caring and like trying to support each other through the traumas of their past. Yeah. But like, I could not have written that stuff if I hadn't also read Starship Troopers and a bunch of times totally. You are a conglomeration of your prior experiences in the media that like, you've consumed. The important bit is to not watch anything blindly, ever. Yeah. Basically, unfortunately, it's really nice to turn your brain off and just watch a thing, but like, never you gotta be cognizant of what they're doing. Turn your brain on and think with it a little bit from time to time. Or if your brain is off, then you might as well have been watching a screensaver. Basically, like it's nothing of value is gained at that point. So okay, I'm stopping. Well, here we are, 3 hours later, and so that was not particularly coherent. But we did talk about a lot of things and a lot of things that I wanted to talk about. And I am really grateful to you, the audience, for listening to it. And I am extremely grateful to Jack for engaging with me on this and like both watching the movie and reading the book, which was like way above and beyond. So thank you to them. And next week, we're going to come back with something that I think is actually will improve you to experience. The Wolves of Yellowstone by Rick McIntyre, joined by my wife. Let's Get Weird About is a production of the Library of Cursed Knowledge.